evening and welcome to the November 29th, 2011 meeting of the Glendale City Council. Can we have a roll call, please?
Council members Manukian.
Here.
Najarian.
Here.
Quintero.
Here.
Weaver.
Here.
Mayor Friedman.
Here. Tonight's flag salute will be led by Councilmember Weaver.
Please join with me in our flag salute. I pledge allegiance
to the flag of the United States of America and to the republic for which it stands, one nation, under God, indivisible, with liberty and justice for all.
Please remain standing for the invocation which will be delivered this evening by Skip Linderman of the La Cañada Congregational Church.
Before I do so, I want to thank you, Mayor Friedman, for the nice proclamation that we read a week ago tonight at our annual Glendale Community Thanksgiving celebration, the interfaith celebration this year at Temple Sinai, Glendale. Here is a prayer from that interfaith celebration. Let us pray. May the lamp of love which eternally burns above kindle divine fires in our hearts and fan that innate spark of divinity into flame, illuminating all, opening our eyes and consuming our differences, driving the shadows from our faces. As love dawns on the horizon, may our community awaken in the kingdom of true communion, which is at hand always. May we recognize ourselves in each other, each in each, fellow pilgrims on this infinite journey, in truth in that light. May we learn to love one another better even than we love ourselves. May joy radiate. Amen.
Amen.
Thank you. That was lovely. Can we hear your report, please?
The agenda for the November 29th, 2011 regular meeting of the Glendale City Council is posted on Wednesday, November 23, 2011 on the bulletin board outside City Hall.
Thank you. Next item.
Under presentation and appointments at 3A is the agenda preview for the meetings of December 6, 2011. And before Assistant City Manager Yasmin Beers reads off the agenda items, I want to note that if there's anyone here for the Rosie Award presentations, that has been moved to December 6th. Thank you.
Madam Mayor, members of the City Council, for the Glendale Housing Authority, we have no business agenda items. We also have no business agenda items for the Glendale Redevelopment Agency. We do have an agenda, a special meeting for the Glendale City Council. This is Director of Community Development and Public Works. This is a proposed ordinance amending Title 12 and Title 30 of the GMC, creating standards and procedures to the permit pedestrian signs on public right-of-way and on private property. This is to allow creative signs in the Montrose Shopping Park and to adopt fees for pedestrian sign permits. That's in the afternoon at 2:30. Also in the afternoon at 2:30 for the Glendale City Council and the Redevelopment Agency, we have a joint public meeting. Director of Community Development, this is amended and restated covenant agreements for the properties located at 140 through 156 South Brown Boulevard and 145 South Maryland Avenue. Director of Community Development, this is a professional services agreement change order in connection with various projects in the redevelopment project area. Director of Public Works, as well as Community Development, South Brown Boulevard Specific Plan, General Plan Amendment, Zone Change, Municipal Code Text Amendments, and recommendations for preferential parking districts for South Brown Boulevard. The evening of the 6th, we do have a long meeting at 6 p.m. for the City Council meeting. We have a number of consent items. Director of Community Services and Parks, this is the Vertigo Mountains 10K Trail Run and Hike. General Manager of Glendale Water and Power and Director of Information Services. This is renewal of maintenance agreement for energy trading software used by GWP. General Manager of GWP, this is a study to identify the optimal configuration for repowering the Grayson Power Plant. General Manager of Glendale Water and Power, this is to furnish labor, equipment, and materials for the Maryland Mini Park Recycled Water Extension Project. There's a number of ordinances for adoption. This is the amending of the zoning code text with commercial hillside 42-foot height recommended by the Planning Commission, and introduction of such with the commercial hillside for 35-foot height. Under action items, we have Director of Human Resources and the City Attorney regarding the interim city manager, appointment and compensation. The Fire Chief, the purchase of fire communications computer-aided dispatch servers. General Manager of Glendale Water and Power and Director of Information Services. This is the enterprise service software, maintenance, and training services to enable GWP Smart Grid and integration in real time of all city applications. Director of Community Development, this is regarding the Montrose Shopping Park annual budget for calendar year 2012. as well as the Adams Square Merchants Association annual budget for calendar year 2012. Director of Public Works, I'm not going to do that one. Under hearings, General Manager of Glendale Water and Power, this is the public auction of the city-owned property located at 3445 Altura Avenue. That concludes my report, Madam Mayor.
Thank you. Next item, please.
Next item is City Council and staff comments.
Are there any comments from council members?
Yes, I would like to congratulate the USC Trojans on their record this year. Wore the appropriate uniform down. I'm sorry, UCLA. I hope you get a great new coach, so it'll be competition for us next year. It makes more fun, the way it wasn't too much fun, but I do know as a long follower of Trojans since 1965, watching what he did with those young men, 18, 19 years old, how he molded them from a bunch of kids that couldn't play together or do anything together in the first game to the way they came out in the 10th game. It was quite wonderful. So that's the one. And the other, anybody still, you can get online anytime to sign up to work on the Rose Float. We start Saturday. There's a lot of skin to put on that elephant. That's going to take a lot of prep time to do. So we can use all the help we can get. Thank you.
Thank you. Other comments, sports or otherwise? Nigerian?
I do have a couple comments. Tomorrow, the city will be dedicating the Transportation Center in memory of our former mayor and council member, Larry Zarian. The public is welcome and invited to attend. The only thing we ask is if you could please give us an RSVP, and you can see the email address there. It's zariandedication@ci.glendale.ca.us. There will be dignitaries from throughout the region and unveiling a reception. Not too many speeches, but I believe this will cap off our tribute in a fitting way to our former mayor and community activist, Larry Zarian. 3 o'clock to 5 p.m. That's at the Transportation Center. Valet parking will be provided, or if you'd like to take public transportation, either Beeline Route 1 or 2 will take you to the front door of the Transportation Center. This weekend, I was very happy to attend the grand opening of the ARTN Theater. This is the theater on San Fernando Road that I've complained about for months and months. This is a theater adjacent to the ARTN television studio. It's going to be for live performances, a great venue. Congratulations to the owner, Robert Oglokjian, as well as kudos to our fire marshal, Jeff Halpern, and senior fire inspector Ahern. What's his first name? Greg Ahern. They did a great job. I'm glad finally we can start adding to the creative corridor along San Fernando Road, and hopefully this will continue the growth and the flourishing of that corridor towards uses in the arts and entertainment and film, etc. Lastly, I hope everyone had a great Thanksgiving. I'd like to give my appreciation to the folks at the Salvation Army, where I spent part of my Thanksgiving serving turkey. Captain Rio Ray, Pauline Richardson, and about 30 or 40 volunteers served approximately 500 residents who otherwise would not have had a hot and delicious Thanksgiving turkey dinner. Congratulations and thanks to the Hilton that prepared the turkeys, as well as many of the other donors who donated the food to make it a warm day for others who otherwise would not have had a satisfying, hearty Thanksgiving meal. Thank you.
Mr. Quintero.
I want to talk about some of the organizations. The Armenia Orphans Fund had a fundraiser dinner that was very well attended, as well as the Armenia Fund that raised over $12 million. And then also the Montrose Shopping Center had their Christmas tree lighting. It was great. Make sure you shop up in Montrose, where there's plenty of local shops with unique merchandise. You don't always have to go to the Galleria or the Americana. You can go up there and get some things that are truly unique and obviously help the local business people.
No one. The Christmas parade, Montrose Christmas parade, is this Saturday. Forgot about that. Starting at 6:10 p.m., right? And with this kind of weather, we should have a huge turnout. So make sure you get there early to find a place to park. Enjoy the evening.
Well, tonight, I want to first wish everybody a very happy Thanksgiving. I hope everyone had a wonderful time with friends, family. It's a night of transitions. First, a sad transition, which is that I would like to ask my colleagues to support me in adjourning tonight's meeting in the memory of former Congressman Carlos Moorhead, who passed away. He passed away November 23rd at the age of 89. Congressman Moorhead was a graduate of Glendale's Hoover High School, earned a bachelor's degree from UCLA and a law degree from USC. So he played both sides.
That's good.
He served in the U.S. Army during World War II, obtaining the rank of lieutenant colonel. He began his political career in 1967 as a member of the California State Assembly, serving there until his election to the United States Congress. He was a member of the U.S. House of Representatives from 1973 until his retirement in 1997, representing Glendale, Burbank, and Pasadena. He served our cities well for those many years and earned recognition and respect from his colleagues in Congress and his constituents here at home. Congressman Moorhead is survived by 3 children, 6 grandchildren, and nieces and nephews. A memorial service will be held for him on Saturday, December 10th at the Glendale Presbyterian Church. So with the permission of my colleagues, we will later on adjourn this meeting in his memory. And now on to a happier transition, hopefully. As many of you know, tonight is our city manager, Jim Starbird's last meeting with us. He has served this city for 14 years, served it well, and has become a fixture in Glendale, certainly representing our city with dignity, with a wonderful set of values, and with strength and with wisdom. And he will be missed. And Mr. Starbird, I would like to ask you to actually go up to the podium, please. A place that you... Well, it is transition time, and I would invite whatever of my colleagues wish to come down, and you take this down. We have a few presentations for you, and I thought it would be more appropriate for you to be, even though you're still up on the dais tonight, just for a moment to be behind the podium.
I'd be happy to leave.
No, no. We don't have a gold watch for you or a diamond pin, but
this carries more
I think that this has more for you, more sentimental value. This is just show the people in the audience, this is an official City of Glendale plaque, official tile that we are presenting to Mr. Starbird in sincere appreciation of gratitude for 13 years, I like to round up. 13 years of dedicated service to the City of Glendale. From March 2nd, 1998 until December 2nd, 2011. Jim, you've been a wonderful mentor, a great benefit to the city, and you're going to be missed.
Thank you. Thank you very much.
Thank you, Jim. I think I speak for all my colleagues that we've had a lot of fun, we've had a lot of pain, good times and bad times, and we've argued and we've been on the same side, but the important thing is that you always put the interests of the residents of Glendale first and foremost, and I don't think we could ask for anything more from a city manager.
Thank you
We
very much.
appreciate all your work.
Thank you very much. This is a rather surreal position for me to be in. I was noting to Frank earlier, as most of you know, I take copious notes throughout the meeting. As the evening wears on, they kind of turn into doodles, but I do take notes, and I found myself today realizing, why am I taking notes this evening? Take notes and then throw them away.
My answer was it would work in case of a subpoena.
Yes. I'll pull them out during the discovery. Let me say these last several months have been rather surreal. At the reception yesterday on the video, I found myself repeating the same words I said when I stood here almost 14 years ago, 13 years and 9 months ago to the day, in expressing my sense of gratitude to the City Council, and that continues through the many councils I've worked for. Mr. Weaver, you've been here the entire 14 years. You were here. You were part of the group that hired me. Mr. Mnuchin, I look back, I think you and Frank are probably number 2 among those. I have the pictures of every council configuration, I'll call it, that I've served with, and we all looked considerably younger back in some of those days. But I found yesterday so many accolades being given to me about the successes that Glendale's had over the last 14 years. And I have to say, with all modesty, that those accolades should begin and end with the City Council first and foremost. You all have the roughest job in the city. We, all of us on staff, actually do get paid for our work. You all get far less than what you deserve. And yet the responsibility begins and ends with all of you. None of us are elected. I've always recognized the city manager doesn't have a vote on the council, even though I can influence it. You all are the representatives of the people. And in our representative form of government, that is where the rubber meets the road. And even though there may have been a few times when the council hasn't gone the direction the staff has recommended, in the end, the right choice for the city is the choice that a majority of you make. That's our form of government. And I want to thank the council that hired me. Dave, you're the last remaining one here on the dais. But I've always appreciated the faith and confidence that group placed in me, and the faith and confidence all of the council that I've worked for have continued to place in me. I have greatly appreciated it, and I continue to feel blessed to have been here the number of years that I have. Few city managers can, at a point in their young career, think of the city they'd like to maybe have the opportunity to end their career in. I did that almost 30 years ago, and it was Glendale, and I had the opportunity to actually fulfill that dream of mine, not just in a city like Glendale, but in the city of Glendale. And few people are able to do that in their entire careers. And as I've often noted to the staff here, there are few people in the public service who will ever have the opportunity to work for a city the caliber of Glendale. I said that the day I stood here almost 14 years ago, and I still feel that way. Secondly, this is a tremendous organization. I've never worked in an organization as fine as this one. And when you take into consideration its size and the level of cooperation and support that exists among the various departments, it is a very unique organization. And many of you have heard the stories over the years of the heroism and the commitment and the people who go way beyond their jobs to serve the residents, individual employees who have acted with heroism, and whole departments working together acting in heroism in some of the darkest hours of the city's experience to make sure that our residents are kept safe. And that is just tremendous. It really is a tremendous asset to the community. And on that note, the third part of what makes Glendale great is a community. This is a tremendous community. I recognized it 14 years ago when I came here and wanted to work here, and I continue to believe that this community has only gotten better and only gotten stronger over the years. The involvement by the social services groups, the nonprofits, the business community. I will tell you, I worked in a community once where I had a hard time identifying what I call the community assets, and those were the business people and the residents who really gave of themselves without any sense of desire for return. And this community is blessed with so many of those people who do that. We've had many of them in this chambers on Tuesdays, business people from auto dealers to developers to insurance brokers to real estate agents who give back to the community in so many different ways. And the community is really blessed. Lastly, I want to say that 14 years ago, I said it was my honor and privilege to be selected to serve as Glendale City Manager. I will always take away from this position a tremendous sense of pride that I had at least some little small part to play in the successes that we've had over the past 14 years. The credit going first to the City Council, secondarily to the staff who actually implement it and make it work. And I feel good about this time. I'm actually very envious of Mr. Ochoa. I'm stepping out of this position and retiring willingly, and yet I find myself being very envious of the young man who now gets to begin the experience that I have had the pleasure of having over the past 14 years. You've made a great selection. I've known Mr. Ochoa for many years. He's a fine young man. I think he brings absolutely the right set of principles and values. He will be very different, I'm sure. I know that he has a strong commitment to public service, and I know that he appreciates and respects the community of Glendale as much as I did 14 years ago and continue to. So with that, I will say it has been my privilege, absolute privilege. It has been my honor and will continue to be my pride for having worked for Glendale for the past 14 years, and thank you all very much.
Yes, Mr. Starbird, as many know, we've had many differences over policy issues the past few months, but those are always differences in policy issues. I've always respected you as an individual, and I continue to do so. I want to wish you and your family well and good health. I think you've served the city well, and I want to thank you for your service. And in the future, if there is, please stay in contact and continue to be in this community and being a part of this community as well.
I appreciate that.
Thank you very much.
I have greatly appreciated on the City Council frankly, the willingness of council members to question things and to frankly give us the tough questions. Frankly, the staff performs better when their feet are held to the fire and they're asked the difficult questions. But on the other hand, you've always taken the answers into consideration. And in the end, if we look at the numbers, all of you, I would say 99 and 9/10% of the time, although you'll ask the tough questions, you'll debate it among themselves, you've been very supportive of the staff here, and I've appreciated that.
Mr. Weaver.
I just want to add, Jim, a few people know this, but virtually every day that you've been on the job, I've spent 15 minutes, 30 minutes, an hour with him. Just about
I actually added it up, Mr. Weaver. I think it was something like 17,347 hours.
Virtually every day I'm in there. It isn't all about USC football. But Jim taught me a lot. I learned a lot. Coming in, I'd only been on council a year or so when you came on board. Still a rookie, so to speak. And you taught me a lot. One of the best things you taught me is to curb my temper. When I said I wanted to come up here and tell a few people off, you'd give me a lot of reasons why I shouldn't. And every time he was right. And I've strived not to blow it. I'm going to miss you. I'm losing my second closest friend, Scott Howard, and now Jim Starbird. And it's going to be a totally different day. I guess Ochoa's going to have to get used to me wandering in to see him, unless he's different than you and kicks me out. I don't know.
I'll not warn him in advance.
Thank you very much, Jim. I'll keep in touch with you, too.
Thank you.
Other comments?
Well, I just want to say Mr. Starbird is a very hard worker, and I hope he spends plenty of time with his grandkids, does absolutely nothing, sleeps in late, and generally enjoys his life. I hope that's what's in your future.
You know, Frank, that's what Jim and I have talked about more lately, our mutual grandchildren. It's new.
I will say it does change your perspective on a lot of things.
Doesn't it? It really does.
It does. Thank you all very much.
Okay, next item, please.
Next item is the consent calendar. The following are routine and may be acted upon by one motion. A member of council or the audience requesting separate consideration may do so by making such request before motions is proposed.
And I need to note, we'd like to take item 5D off calendar. It will return, but it needs to come off calendar for this evening. That's 5D. 5D is in dog. That's the Trails grant.
And I'd like to pull 5C.
Okay. I have a request to pull 5C.
I'll move the remainder of the consent calendar.
Second?
Okay, roll call, please.
Council members Manukian,
Yes.
Najarian,
Yes.
Quintero,
Yes.
Weaver,
Aye.
Mayor Friedman.
Yes. Mr. Quintero.
Yeah, 5C.
5C is General Manager of Glendale Water and Power regarding professional consulting service for natural gas hedging. At C1 is resolution approving an extension to the contract with the Energy Authority for 3 years at $10,000 per month with an option to terminate with 30-day notice in a total not to exceed amount of $360,000.
Okay, I don't have any questions about the extension. I think it's a good idea to go with the same firm. But can we have a report? I'm curious as to how we're doing in terms of the hedging and what kind of...
Yes, we can have that within the month. We'll
and
provide
it
that.
would be for a year?
We can do
Will
it.
we have monthly reports on this?
Excuse me?
Can we have monthly reports on these issues?
We
Especially when it deals with...
We can, yeah. There's two sides of this. There's the hedging piece, and then there's the supply and trading piece. So would you like us to give you one report including both? Or
Yeah,
just,
I'd like to see both. I'm just curious as to how we're doing, and are we making any money? And
we are making money, yes.
I know we are. How
Yeah.
much? That's the...
So,
But anyway, I support the extension.
thank you, and I'll provide a report for you. Thank you.
We'll move the item?
I'll move the item.
Second.
Okay, roll call.
Council members Manukian,
Yes.
Najarian,
Yes.
Quintero,
Yes.
Weaver,
Aye.
Mayor Friedman.
Yes. Next item, please.
Next item is oral communications. This is a portion that's reserved for 3-minute announcements from the community. We will have the full 5-minute portion at the conclusion of city business.
Thank you. My first card is Steve Pierce, also known as Santa.
Well, a very short Santa, at least. But Mayor Friedman and Council, it's my pleasure to be here talking on behalf of the Montrose Christmas Parade event this Saturday. As Councilmember Weaver mentioned, it's our 35th annual parade. Pleased that each one of the council and the mayor is going to be in our parade. We're looking forward to it. This could be a very big parade for us. Our grand marshals are Helen and Jack Nethercutt. They own the Nethercutt Collection. Fine Cars. They also own the Merle Norman Cosmetics firm. They're doing a huge promotion right now for our parade. We're expecting upwards to 25 to 30,000 people that will be lining the streets of Montrose to watch this parade. We've been checking the weather report vigorously and found that the rain's going to stay away from our parade, so that's good. And we're expecting just a nice cold night, so dress warmly. But we're asking all of Glendale to please join us for Saturday, December 3rd, 6:10. The parade starts. Santa Claus flies down the parade route in a nice Glendale police helicopter, waving to the crowd. That's our tradition. That's our logo. It's just lots of fun. We have 140 entries in the parade, 11 bands, 6 or 7 horse contingents. Over 700 scouts are going to be marching in our parade. We have Congressman Adam Schiff is going to be in our parade, Senator Carol Liu, Anthony Portantino, of course Supervisor Antonovich, and of course our Glendale City Council, which we're very pleased to have. So please join us December 3rd, 6:10, and looking forward to a great evening. Thank you.
Give the limits so people know they can get down near the beginning.
At the beginnings of the parade?
Well, what the limits? Where does the parade start?
Oh, thank you. The parade starts actually at Rosemont Avenue and Honolulu. The people check in at La Crescenta and Honolulu Avenues, and the check-in starts anywhere after 3 o'clock. But the parade actually goes right past Rosemont, from Rosemont to Verdugo Road on Honolulu. It's about a 1.5 mile distance.
And near the beginning, there's a lot less people, so
That's right.
if you want to get close, do it up there.
Absolutely. As you get closer to Ocean View and down towards where the TV announcers are, it gets very close. And as I mentioned before, TV, we are going to be showing on Charter Channel 382 as the International Christian Family Network. We're hoping that Glendale Channel 6 will get into the feed on this. We'd love to have Glendale involved on that. And we're working on having an internet telecast on our website, which is Montrose montrosechristmasparade.com, and hopefully if we get that worked out, we'll have everyone in the world be able to watch our parade live. So all the grandparents back in the East Coast could see our parade and see our grandkids. So I want to thank you very much. I want to thank very much the City of Glendale for sponsoring this parade. This is the city's parade. We get great support from Department of Public Works. I can't thank Mary Velasquez in permits, and Teresa in parks, Sergeant Mike Glassick with the Glendale PD. It's just been fabulous. You guys are great supporters of this parade. Thank you.
Thank you. Thank you for putting it together. My next card is Vahe Kazanjian.
Madam Mayor Laura Friedman, councilmen, city manager, ladies and gentlemen, I'm here in person. It's an honor to see City of Glendale. They give the highest respect to the person he did a lot of work to this city. Mayor Larry Zarian, he was a gifted person. And that's the reason I'm wearing this black. I'm sad because we lost him. But I thank you for the City of Glendale official who put together this wonderful program in celebration of past Mayor Larry Zarian's life and accomplishment in Alex Theater. I truly appreciated every second of the memorable event on November 21st, 2011. May God bless you all and grant you all the success and prosperity this city of Glendale deserves. Please accept this flag of the United States of America in memory of late Mayor Larry Zarian. I'd like to give it this wonderful flag, which is, he served under this flag in the city of Glendale. Please accept this.
I will come up and accept it gratefully. Thank you.
I salute you and I thank you for it.
Thank you, sir.
God bless you. Thank you all.
Thank you.
Thank you.
Thank you. That's a very fitting tribute, and we will fly the flag proudly. My last card is Diana Costa.
Mayor Friedman, City Council members, citizens of Glendale, I am president of the Glendale Philharmonic Orchestra, and I am thankful for all of you and your support in backing us up. And because of your support, we are able to start our third season. And we'd like to invite you to our concert that is coming up January 8th, 2012. We're calling it the Holiday Concert. It will feature comedian Emo Phillips, and he will be narrating Peter and the Wolf. And we will also have cellist Ruslan Biryukov performing the Haydn Cello Concerto in D. And we will also be our secretary, who remains unnamed at this moment, will be performing the Concerto for Typewriter by Leroy Anderson. And some of you may be familiar with that piece. If you're not, I recommend looking it up on YouTube. It's very funny. And we'll also have some holiday songs. Our orchestra is actually at the 2-year-old point, and we're going to be having a free birthday cake supplied by Billy's Deli, and everyone will get a piece. So we'd love to have you, and we have tickets are now on sale online, and we'd love to see you all there.
I'll just make a very quick plug. The Philharmonic Orchestra is really wonderful. If you haven't seen them, I highly recommend it. And this sounds like a very family-friendly, fun program. I will certainly be there. Eric Yasayan is my last card.
Hi, my name is Eric Yasayan. I'm a member of Walk Bike Glendale. It's a group we've just recently established to make more awareness for walking and biking in Glendale. And we're going to be participating in the Montrose Christmas Parade this Saturday. We wanted to invite the council members, if you're not already doing anything else in the parade, to come and walk and bike with us. And anyone else in the public. We do have a limit on how many people we can have. But if anybody is interested, this flyer does have information to learn more about it, and I also have some more information. And if anybody wants to learn more about what we're doing or join us and be involved, you can go to our website. We have, which is on the web, it's walkbyglendale.org. Thank you.
Thank you. Next item, please.
Next item is adoption of ordinances. Item 7 at 7A is ordinance approving a development agreement in connection with the multifamily residential development project Colorado Gardens to be located at 124 West Colorado Street and 203 West Elk Avenue. This was offered on November 15, 2011 by Councilmember Weaver.
Madam Mayor, move 7A.
Second.
Okay, roll call.
Council members Menuchyan,
No.
I only have a card for 7B and 7C.
Council members Najarian,
Yes.
Quintero,
Yes.
Weaver,
Aye.
Mayor Friedman.
Yes.
7B is an ordinance approving development agreement in connection with the multifamily residential development project Kenwood Terrace to be located at 118 South Kenwood Street. This was offered also on November 15, 2011 by Councilmember Weaver.
Okay, I have a card. Mike Mohill.
Good evening, Mayor Friedman, council members, and the viewing audience. My name is Mike Mohill. First of all, you mentioned Carlos Moorhead. I had met him during the election, and he was a wonderful man, and he gave me advice how to run for city council. So, having said that, I'd like to talk about the subject matter of item 7B, 35 units on Kenwood. This is just one of approximately 2,000 additional residents who will be living in the city of Glendale. We have 7 new projects approved in the past 3 years. 924 new units, 3 in the lofts in downtown Glendale area. These units is going to affect the quality of life for the residents of Glendale. We're going to have shortage of parking. We're going to have accelerated gridlock. When we want to get onto the freeway and off the freeway, right now it takes 2-3 signal lights to get through. It's going to be perhaps 4, 5, or 7 next time. The question is, who's benefiting by all of these additional housing projects? Well, first person would be the developer. And he's probably an absentee landlord. The second person who will benefit by this will be the merchants. But who won't benefit by it are the single-family residents who support this city every day with our tax money. You're going to tell us we have to cut back in our water needs. We need to conserve water. You're going to tell us the landfill is full. Of course it's full, because we're going to have additional families in here. You're going to tell us that you're going to go ahead and also, I understand that Brand Boulevard and Central, we're going to have a bike lane on those streets. So the biking lanes will be fighting with the automobile lanes. That'll be affecting the quality of life of people living. You're going to be accelerating gridlock. The merchants, another person who benefits by this are the city employees. Because without property tax, we can't finance their pensions. And that's the number one priority of this city, is take care of the finance, the pension obligations that we've committed. And without more taxes and revenue, we can't take care of that obligation. So, who benefits? Not the people. Thank you.
Thank you.
And the mayor moves 7B.
Second.
Okay, roll call.
Council members Menuchyan,
I voted yes on this last time, but no.
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 Councilmember Menuchyan, no. Najarian,
Yes.
Quintero,
Yes.
Weaver,
Aye.
Mayor Friedman.
Yes. Next item.
Next item at C is an ordinance approving a development agreement in connection with the Verdugo Gardens 2 development project to be located at 610 through 626 North Central Avenue. This was offered on November 15th, 2011 by Councilmember Weaver.
You have a card?
Yes, I have card. Mike Mohill.
Evening, Mayor Freeman, council members, and the viewing audience. My name is Mike Mohill. Verdugo Gardens, 6-story tall, 220 residential units, 2 levels of parking, 298 parking spaces on the corner of Central, Dorn, and Sanchez. Talking about gridlock again. Isn't that right where Central meets the 134 freeway? So we're going to have 220 residents times 2. We're going to have like about 500 people pull in and out of that building every day. And the funny thing about these people, they don't work in Glendale. 80% of the people who live in Glendale work someplace else. They're going to be working, they're going to Mission Hills, downtown Los Angeles, Simi Valley, City of Commerce. And we're going to have more cars in the streets on Brand, Central, the 134 freeway. This is going to impact my quality of life and a lot of other people. Parking, gridlock, the landfill. It's not going to last forever, the landfill. And once that landfill is full, we're going to have to be taking our trash out to the desert. And our trash fees will triple, if not even more, in time. Now, this council may not be here, but I've been living in Glendale for about 60 years, and I've seen the changes. This is not the same Glendale that I grew up. We didn't need to pass bonds to finance our city, which we're doing right now. We just trying to pass a $60 million water bond this morning. This affects the quality of life. But let's get back to accelerated gridlock. All these developments in 3 years. Mayor Freeman, it started with you, 2009, and it's been going on. Now you can say, oh, this is part of the Downtown Pacific Plan, and they went ahead and they authorized all this building. That's right. But that was that council then, and we have a different situation today. We have gridlock, and those people who were the council people, God bless them, but you have an opportunity to make changes. And changes is to reduce the amount of housing in downtown Glendale. I can't get through Glendale without taking a siesta first to have the energy during the afternoon. It's going to get worse. And the next generation will say, thank you, council members. You improved our quality of life for the developers, the merchants, and the city employees who need that pension money. Thank you. My name is Mike Mohill.
Najarian.
Well, Mr. Mohill, I feel your frustration, but I think it's misplaced. As I stated last week or the week before, in case anyone has not been paying attention to the latest census count for the city of Glendale, we have dropped significantly as a community, close to 10% of our population. We were previously at 207,000 plus a few. The most recent census count has us down to 192,000, which is a drop of about 15,000 residents. The projects that Mr. Mohill has referred to if built, and there still is a big if, may add maybe several hundred residents to Glendale.
Mr. Mohill, please have a seat.
Furthermore,
Are you just grabbing something?
Furthermore, it has been the intention of this council to protect our hillsides by encouraging growth in the downtown area so as not to cut into the green fields and the nice scenic slopes of our council. We have bought hundreds and hundreds of acres of open space in the hillsides with the prime intention to direct the developers to present their projects and to build their projects downtown where there's existing infrastructure, where we can consolidate and control and encourage them to make green buildings that are energy efficient, that are self-sustaining, and that provide alternate modes of transportation. In fact, just this morning, one of the projects before us, or was it this afternoon, involves bike racks and a shared electric vehicle within the project. So, although clearly, as I said, I sense your frustration, but I don't share it, because I think this is the most appropriate type of growth that we can do. And we're still losing residents. Ask the school district. They are way down on enrollment, and a city that doesn't that is not concerned about growth and evolving may end up losing more than they bargained for.
Thank you. Mr. Quintero.
Let me just add briefly that we're talking about an empty lot, kind of slash eyesore on the corner of Central as you come off the 134 freeway. So instead of that, the Crocodile Cafe was there years ago. It's been empty for years. Instead of that, we're going to have a beautifully designed building, architecturally significant, and all of those people, I'm sure, will be shopping in Glendale, number one, and two, may possibly be also working in Glendale since it's located in the city core.
Yes, I will be voting for this project, and I'm pleased to see this project, which the prior project in the same location that came before us back in from when I remember, it was a 25-story building. I'm pleased to see it at 6 stories. I am also pleased that the developer made a commitment to pay the arts fee instead of putting an art piece in their building. So because of that, I agreed to vote for this project now, and I will be supporting it.
I'll just say one last thing about downtown development in general. The concern is that if you build downtown housing, that you're going to increase the traffic in the downtown. But we can't forget that our downtown also is the home to a lot of corporate centers and a lot of large office buildings. And most of those people who work in those office buildings, or quite a lot of them, don't live in the city. And one of the reasons that some of them don't live in the city is that we don't offer housing for them. If you're a person under the age of 30 working in a downtown building, you're probably not in a point in your life where you're going to be buying a 3-bedroom house in the hills of Glendale. You're probably looking for more of a, an apartment condo type building, and young people today like to live in downtowns. They like to live in places where they can take the bus, ride their bike, walk to shops, walk to restaurants, and have that sort of more vibrant lifestyle than what is offered in a more of a single-family suburban neighborhood. We don't offer very much of that in our downtown, and so we leave it to those people to live outside of the city and then drive into our downtown. By providing housing in the downtown, we give the opportunity for people to live near where they work in close enough proximity that they don't have to drive to work. That, in the end, reduces traffic for those residents. It can actually take traffic off the roads and not add to traffic. So it's a more complicated analysis than just if you add the housing downtown, that you add a lot more traffic. Because in many situations, you actually decrease traffic because you stop people from commuting to their jobs. So I just wanted to throw that out there for people that are listening and sharing those concerns, that it's a little bit more complicated than that. Mr. Starber, did you raise your hand?
Madam Mayor, before I move 7C, Mr. Mohill, I beat you. I've been here more than 72 years. I have seen change more than you have. Some of it not for the good. But there's been a lot of good that's happened in our city. I'm proud of. As far as I know, as long as you have land You have a right to develop on that land as long as you comply with the zoning ordinances of the city. In this case, we spent some 10 years developing that downtown specific plan without you, and without others that have come in here and complained. And we did it consciously, like my colleagues said, to keep the traffic out of the neighborhoods and concentrate it downtown, where hopefully the people eventually live in there, from the entertainment industry probably, will walk downtown in the evenings and shop. That's where we want it. That's where we want the revenue. That's where we want people to live. So I think this is just another step in that process. And before Crocodile Cafe, that was Reflections. And I ate in Reflections when our children were very young. I love that place. So now, the whole thing is evolving. The building's gone, and we're going to get a great new one. So I will move 7C.
Second.
Okay, roll call, please.
Council members Menuchyan,
Yes.
Najarian,
Yes.
Quintero,
Yes.
Weaver,
Aye.
Mayor Friedman.
Yes, next item.
Under action items, 8A is Director of Human Resources regarding amendment to the Memorandum of Understanding MOU between the City of Glendale and the Glendale Firefighters Association, GFFA. At 8A1 is a resolution approving amendment number 3.
You don't look like the Human Resources Director.
I was trying to fool you tonight. Good evening, Madam Mayor, members of the City Council, Harold Scoggins, Fire Chief. Matt Doyle is out of town right now, so I'll be talking about the item. Back in May, you may remember the fire department presented a new plan for our basic life support units to transition out 21 sworn firefighter positions by placing 2 firefighter paramedics on each engine. This is another step in that plan, modifying the Glendale Firefighters Association Memorandum of Understanding. There's several key points in here to point out tonight, and then I'll be ready to take questions if you have them. And one of the key points is, starting January 1, 2012, the promoted ranks, which are the engineers who drive the fire engines and the fire captains who are paramedics, their paramedic assignment pay would go from 8 to 15% because we would be using them in a capacity as a paramedic assignment on those engines. There's approximately 18 of those. The reason why we would need to do this, in order to implement this plan, January 9th of 2012, we don't have enough firefighter paramedics currently. So our implementation period would be approximately 18 months, from January 1, 2012 to June 30th, 2013. At that point in time, those promoted ranks would go back down to the 8% paramedic assignment pay that they currently receive today, because by that time we will have enough paramedic firefighters. We've also done something else with this contract amendment. We put a cap on the number of promoted paramedic engineers and captains. Today we do not have a cap. This is something that is good for us. It allows us to manage the program with the number of promotions with the paramedics, and that cap is at 28. Starting January 1, 2012, all of the firefighters who become firefighter paramedics, instead of going to a cap of 16% of top step firefighter for their paramedic assignment pay, they would only go to 15%. Currently, today, it's 16%. And the paramedic firefighters today who already are receiving the assignment pay, June 30th, 2012, they would go down to 15%, because this is our window of 18 months implementation, and there's a lot of transition happening with the plan. Starting January 1, 2012, all of our non-paramedics would receive a 1% top step EMS assignment pay. So this is balancing out with the paramedics going down to a 15% paramedic assignment pay, to offset that with the 1% EMS pay for all the non-paramedics on the department.
Any questions? Mr. Menuchyan?
Yes, I'm looking at the report, and I have disagreed with this program during the budget study session. That's no secret. I respect your opinion, and thank you for the presentation, but under the fiscal impact, it just says that there's only 3 lines. It just says the potential savings are estimated to be between $2 million and $2.5 million annually. I would have liked to have seen 2012, what the additional costs will be, what the savings would be, and the following few years if you have those numbers. But I don't see any financial numbers on here in terms of what it will be, because we're increasing some of the pay and.
Right.
And it's going to go back the following years. So.
As it relates to the BLS program, I think we didn't include all that here because you had such a long discussion of it during your budget study session. And those numbers, including projections, are in the Management Partners report. And we'll get you...
Which report?
It's called, we call it Management Partners. That's the firm that... I had a firm come in and do, I'll call it a peer review of what the finance staff and the fire staff did in analyzing this program. Another set of eyes to look at it and analyze it and make sure we touched all the right bases and that our projections were as accurate as we could make at that time. That company was Management Partners. That's what they do.
Okay.
And we gave you a copy of that report, and the staff used it for review during the program. Be happy to give you the copy. They did a projection and verified all the various costs that would come out of the program. Actually, the net result is considerable savings that come out of the program. And let me note that one of the key aspects of this relates to sort of the discussion the council has had about fire services over the past 4 or 5 years now, which is the staffing on the engine companies. As you know, the chief believes, and I completely agree, and this council has agreed, that the most appropriate staffing level for our engine companies and truck companies in Glendale, given our wildlands exposure and our urban exposures, is 4 people per engine company. This program allows us to, if assuming the projections are accurate, and again, both the staff and Management Partners have confirmed that, this will give us a level of savings in the fire department equivalent to if we had taken 1 person off of every engine company on a permanent basis. And yet, this program allows us to have that level of savings and not have to do that. In fact, it increases the level of paramedic response services on every engine company so that you will actually be getting life-saving response to people who need that advanced life support quicker than what even happens today. In addition to creating this cadre of hourly emergency EMTs, what's that stand for? Emergency medical technicians.
Emergency medical
EMTs.
technicians.
This very large cadre of emergency medical technicians who will be, on the one hand, a pool of resources for recruiting into the fire service, as well as when you need them, you can call all 60 of those people in if we had a disaster and needed those services. That is a tremendous sort of side benefit to this program that comes with it. We didn't spell all that out here because you spent quite a bit of time on it during budget going through that. But we're happy to give you another copy of that report electronically if you want to look at it.
Councilman Manukian, Mayor Friedman, Councilman Manukian, I think to answer your question more directly, there's a little confusion on the paramedic assignment pay versus the 1% for the non-paramedics on the department. Is that where your question is directed at?
No, it's not. It's just a general question in terms of the finances, because in general, when I read the reports under the heading of fiscal impact, there's a little more detail. Here, there's really nothing there.
That's why we didn't go into all of that.
That was my only question. I mean, in principle, I don't know if the program will work the way it's planned to work. I hope it does, but I've opposed the program from the beginning. So
I'll just say we in the department have tried to be very thorough in vetting out all of the complexities of the program.
And I know that you probably have provided me back in maybe May.
We give you all a lot of stuff. We'll be happy to provide it again.
I'd appreciate it. Thank you.
And just so you have an understanding of the personnel impact, up to this point, since 2008, the Glendale Fire Department, we had reduced by 17 positions. This would be an additional 21 positions. So the fiscal impact would be well over $2 million. And I can send you that if you like, again, the Management Partners report and the presentation that we did back in May. But it is a total of over 38 positions in the last 4 years and what the department has reduced down.
I understand.
Mr. Starbird?
I have to add, I can't say enough about the way that Harold and his management team and the rank and file firefighters through the association have worked together for not just on this project, but on all the efforts the fire department has made during this recession to maintain or improve service levels while reducing costs. This basic concept, the first glimmer of this idea, actually first was brought up by the association to take a look at. They'd heard of it happening someplace else. They said, maybe we could look at this. I will tell you, in most organizations, you won't see that. You'll see resistance to this kind of a program. That's really phenomenal, and all the staff and Harold's leadership are to be commended, I think.
Madam Mayor, I'll move 8A1.
Second.
Okay, roll call.
Council members Manukian,
No.
Najarian,
Yes.
Quintero,
Yes.
Weaver,
Aye.
Mayor Friedman.
Yes. Next item.
9 under hearings at 9A is Director of Community Development regarding North Glendale Community Plan. At 9A1 is a resolution adopting a negative declaration. At 9A2 is a resolution adopting amendments to a general plan. And at 9.3 is a resolution adopting the North Glendale Community Plan. 9.4 is an ordinance for introduction amending the zoning code text with a commercial hillside for 42-foot high recommended by the Planning Commission. F5 is an ordinance for introduction amending the zoning code text with a commercial hillside 35-foot height. 6 is an ordinance for introduction amending the zoning code text with a commercial hillside combination of 35-50-foot height. 7, an ordinance for introduction amending the zoning map. 8 is an ordinance for introduction amending the zoning map for Indian Springs. At 9 is a resolution adopting the citywide comprehensive design guidelines.
I'm going to open the public hearing, and I'm also going to ask if anybody is here to speak on this item, if you haven't already done so, to please turn your cards in now. Thank you. Ms. Stotler.
Mayor Friedman, members of the council, the North Glendale Community Plan, we're calling up the PowerPoint now, is going to be part of the city's general plan if it's adopted. Community plans have a special place in the state law. They actually have a general plan authority, which is greater than the zoning code, similar to the land use element and other elements of the general plan. The community plan area that we're talking about for North Glendale is basically the area north of Montecito Park and Spar Heights and the Crescenta Valley. We had an extensive outreach program, which is basically a 3-part program where we met with a community and advisory committee, and then we drafted the plan and put it out for public review. For community outreach, we met with the community, we met with individuals, business associations to identify the issues affecting North Glendale. We reached consensus for many areas in the plan. But we did have areas where there were disagreement, mainly, we'll go over the areas where we had disagreement. To address those issues, we formed an advisory committee. And the advisory committee was made up of approximately 35 members representing residents, commercial property owners, community leaders, business associations, and I'd like to thank them. They're here. Many of them are here now. They spent a lot of time working on this. We had a number of meetings between August and November to look at focused issues. This would be November 2009. Based on their discussions, we created recommendations, which the advisory committee presented to council in June 2010, and those became the basis for creating the community plan. Along with our topical discussions, they did take walking tours through the Crescenta Valley, focusing on Spar Heights and then also on Foothill. And as a result of the community meetings that we had, the areas where we had disagreement, and again, most of the areas we did have agreement, but the areas where we did hear some disagreement were basically regarding Foothill. We had issues with Foothill streetscape, the design for Foothill, how do we make sure that there's compatibility between uses, commercial uses and residential uses? How do we address transportation issues in North Glendale? And the first item that the advisory committee formed was a community vision. This is in Chapter 2 of the community plan. As we drafted the plan, we realized while there was disagreement on basically height, the remaining of the issues we did get consensus, and that really forms the basis of your plan. Again, the advisory committee did focus only on those limited areas, but the plan itself is much broader. The plan was presented to the Planning Commission and Design Review Boards multiple times. Before it actually went to the Planning Commission, it did go to the Historic Preservation Commission, Transportation Parking Commission, and Parks and Recreation Commission. Not only did they look at the plan, they also looked at the general plan element amendments that are also in the packet. The general plan elements are proposed to be amended in order to allow for the community plan to take effect. In addition to the community plan itself, we were interested in implementation. So we felt it's not only enough to have a plan, we want the plan to actually work. So we provided a complete package for you. We included text changes, general plan map changes, general plan amendments, and a comprehensive design guidelines. And I know they're all reviewed in your staff report. So I'd like to focus on the Glendale community plan first. It's organized into 5 chapters and also in a historic context. The historic context itself is extensive and was reviewed by the Historic Preservation Commission and provides a good overview of the background for the North Glendale community. The report itself, as you look at the 5 chapters, it actually follows this model. We looked at the big picture, the vision, that's chapter 2, and then we drilled down in chapter 3 to the principles that apply citywide and identified how those principles apply to the different neighborhoods in North Glendale. Chapter 4 is the heart of the plan. That's where the neighborhoods are described and those principles are identified at a neighborhood level. And then we have a series of implementation measures, again, that we've provided to make the plan come into fruition. Chapter 4, there's 7 areas. They're organized in a format where we talk about the vision for what we'd like to see in the future. It's not just describing what's there now, but what we would like to see. We've also provided a section on public infrastructure, and then finally design guidelines that are tailored to the individual characteristics of those communities. Chapter 4 places, this identifies the different neighborhoods and where they're located in the community plan. Again, we did have agreement on the vision for the majority of neighborhoods and districts, with the exception of height on Foothill. But here's where we did have agreement on Foothill. We agreed that the existing uses, the C3 uses, should be maintained. There was no desire to change the uses that are there, and they felt that we wanted to retain existing businesses and also attract new ones. They agreed that buildings should follow topography, and topography up there on Foothill Boulevard is perhaps the most differentiating feature from this street from other commercial streets in the city. There was concern about the design, and we should encourage varying roof heights. And again, this is a theme that's repeated often by Design Review Board. And then again, the idea of transitions between commercial and residential uses, and we addressed those by requirements for retaining walls and also additional landscaping. And we included those recommendations in a new commercial hillside zone that we're proposing. Now, this is the way we would address height on Foothill. Essentially, the maximum height allowed in the C3 zone is 50 feet. We have no current restrictions on the height of retaining walls, and we're all proposing to include height in retaining walls. We're also including a height on maximum building height. Again, it's 50 feet now. The Planning Commission recommended a height of 42 foot. There's also a 35-foot alternative, and your packet also includes a 35 to 50-foot combination alternative. All those alternatives were reviewed by the Planning Commission. To understand how height affects buildings and views and impacts on Foothill, it's necessary to understand how Glendale measures height. We don't measure it from the street level. We measure it from where a building comes out of the ground to the highest point on the building. Here's some examples. This is Pennsylvania at Foothill on the north side. And this is at Boston and Foothill on the south side. So you can see from Foothill, it appears to be 18 feet, yet the actual height of the building is much larger. It's 36 feet. And again, here's another example on the south side of Foothill, where it appears to be 1 story from Foothill, yet it's actually 2 stories the way we measure the code. And sometimes they're not full stories, sometimes they're basements. Then there's an issue of how does retaining wall affect heights? We have no height right now on retaining walls in the C3 zone. So here's an example where you have a 20-foot retaining wall and then you have a building atop the retaining wall. The height of the building itself is not affected by the height of the retaining wall the way Glendale measures it. So, yeah, I'm going to explain that now. So why is the restriction on retaining walls important? Here you have the natural grade. If you add a retaining wall, there's an unlimited height that you can, at this point, that you can have. So you could have a 20-foot wall, you could have a 10-foot wall, there's no limit. And oftentimes you'll see, like on the previous example, where people will build up a retaining wall so they can have drainage on a pad area down to foothill. Then they build on top of that. Right now our zoning code would allow 50 feet on top of an unlimited retaining wall. So this is how it's impacted.
So the height of the building is counted from
the pad. The height of the building is here. Where
not below.
Right. This is not counted at all toward the height of the building under our zoning code. This is unlimited under today's C3 zone.
And that retaining wall could be any height at this point currently?
This could be any height. We've seen retaining walls there on
20 foot, that's what it was?
We've seen at least 20 feet tall in some examples. And again, here's an example of our current standard. We have the retaining wall, and then we actually have a 6-foot high boundary wall between zones. What we're proposing to do is limit to a maximum of 10-foot total retained, and they could achieve that through a maximum 5-foot wall. So you could have a maximum 5-foot wall here and a maximum 5-foot wall here. This is the same concept that we use in residential hillside areas to retain the amount of landform alteration that can occur, or the amount of change that you would create in a lot.
So your proposal is to have a maximum of 10 feet?
Yes, that's correct.
And they can, the builders can cut it any way they want?
5 and 5.
They could, up to a maximum of 5
3
foot.
and 4?
No, they could do a 5-foot wall, and they could do a wall anywhere, another wall anywhere up to 5 feet.
Up to 5 feet.
To a maximum of 10 feet, correct.
So the first one has to be 5 feet? The
If they
first
wanted-
retaining wall?
They could go 2 feet for the first retaining wall, 5 feet for the next
They can
one.
only do 2 retaining walls? Is that what they're limited to?
Maximum 2 retaining walls.
But a combination of 10 feet.
A combination of 10 feet, correct.
A maximum of 10 feet?
A maximum of 10 feet, and each wall could have a maximum of 5 feet. And so again, this would be the proposed standard where you limited the height.
One other thing going back, between the two 5-foot walls or whatever heights they are, you have a separation of 5 feet, which is planted.
That would be correct.
Is that a requirement?
Yes, it would be. Well, there would be a requirement that the walls be separated by a 2-to-1 slope, being or up to 2-to-1 slope, and that they would be at least 5 feet apart.
That shows the next picture.
Could be further.
Right.
And this is an example of an existing retaining wall combination that illustrates the concept we want to implement. And again, by putting a height limit on retaining walls, you restrict the amount of landform alteration that occurs. Your retaining wall restrictions basically control the height and the amount of change that can occur on a property. What that does is it makes sure that the overall height of the building reflects the topography rather than our current situation where you could have an unlimited height, create a new pad, and then build your building. The other item that I'd like to point out is that if this is adopted where we have retaining wall restrictions in commercial zones, there would be an option for putting this into other commercial zones if we think this is viable. And again, this is an example of the existing height that you could put on Foothill Boulevard up to 50 feet. And this is the impact that having just the retaining walls alone will have on the overall height as viewed from Foothill Boulevard. So while the code may allow 50 feet, actually, even if you kept a 50-foot height, the maximum you would view from Foothill would be approximately 40 feet. And again, there might be slight changes because every lot up there on Foothill has different topography, but this is an example. Yes.
Could you tell me here, how would you calculate the building height? You'd calculate it from the back?
Building height is where the building comes out of the ground. So it doesn't affect, the retaining walls aren't affected into the height calculation. It's where the building comes out of the wall. So in this case, it would be here. Then you'd have 50 feet.
That is, okay, and that would be 50 feet in this case?
In this case.
Right.
Right, and again, there's almost an infinite number of cases giving the amount of topographic change on Foothill. You have change going north-south and change going east-west on Foothill.
So with 50, you can get up to 3 stories.
That's correct. And here's a demonstration of what it could be at 42 foot. This is a slightly different design, where if you had a basement or semi-subterranean parking, again, you could actually build down a little bit deeper, but where the height's measured, you could still have your retaining walls, but your height then would be measured from where your opening would be, where your wall actually daylights.
And you could only get a two-story.
Viewed from Foothill, yes. And then here's a limit at 35 feet. And I'd like to point out this would actually be for a new building for 35 feet. Most of the buildings that are already existing, a lot of them are deeper than this, like the examples that we showed earlier. So whether you could get 2 stories, you may or may not be able to get 2 stories. Depending on new construction, you probably could, because they would be aware of a retaining wall restriction, but existing lots may have more constraints. And again, this is the 35, 50-foot option combination. The difference in this option is that the majority of the building would be at 35 feet. However, the front half of the building, up to 30% of it, could go up to 50 feet. And this would essentially be useful only for those lots that had a large frontage. However, the retaining wall restriction would also have the greatest impact on the lots with large frontages, just due to the topographic change across a lot.
What do you mean topographic change across the lots?
Sloping down.
You have a slope that goes on both ways on Foothill. So you have a slope that goes east to west. Towards Lowell, it's higher elevation than it is toward Pennsylvania. So you have a slope there. And then you also have a slope, especially for lots on the south, from north to south. So the way retaining wall heights would be measured, it's total amount retained. So your control point would essentially be the lowest point, or it would be the southeast corner of the lot. So the longer your lot is, the more topographic change you'll have. This shows the maximum height is viewed from Foothill, assuming there's a 42-foot height limit with the retaining wall restrictions. So the yellow area shows that we would have a 35-foot or less height. The orange area shows that it would be 35 to 41 feet, and the red would be 42 feet. The assumption on the north side, where there's the red, is that your lowest point would be Foothill Boulevard, because it tends to be upsloping. And then in here, mostly in this area here, you're looking at 35 feet or less for the height, maximum height.
Was there any differences, or was there any discussion regarding lots on the upslope and the ones on the downslope?
Yes, there was a discussion. The advisory committee looked at having different zoning on one side than the other. The consensus that we heard was that they felt that there should be one height limit, but they did explore that for the entire street. Although they did explore the options, Planning Commission also looked at the same option.
But that option was considered?
That was considered.
I'm sorry, is that a current survey?
What this is using the city's topo. It's using the city's topo, and it's just simple math. We calculated the lowest point on the property and the highest point in the elevation of Foothill, and we added. Basically, we took the lowest point, added 52 feet, 10 feet being retaining, plus a 42-foot height option, just to see what would you see from Foothill Boulevard. So it.
But that is every lot. You did that for every lot.
We did that for every lot on Foothill Boulevard in Glendale. And again, you can see that where you have some of these larger lots, because of the topographic differences between the higher portion of the lot and the lower portion of the lot, it results in a lower total building height possible.
So how would that affect, on a large lot like that, how would the building height would be calculated from the southeast corner?
Well,
that would be the lowest point?
Not your building height, your retaining wall. So the total effect would be from Foothill would be lower, because you wouldn't be able to build up the pad as high as you would otherwise.
Right, but in terms of building height, the southeast corner, you would measure the building height from the southeast corner. What about the southwest corner?
You'd measure the retaining wall.
If the lot is, fairly wide, How would you measure the building height? Would the southeast corner be the same as the northwest corner?
No, because you would restrict how your pad is constructed. This retaining wall here that
Okay.
becomes the control on how high a building can be is viewed from foothill because you're stopping the landform alteration. So what happens is your ultimate view from foothill, it looks lower. It'll appear lower because you can't change the retaining
On the south
wall.
side, on the
the
south.
south, especially the south side.
On the southeast side.
That's going to be where there's the greatest impact.
So-
And then your height of your building, though, is always measured from where the building comes out of the ground to the top. The real control is going to be the retaining wall.
It would be calculated at the lowest point, though. How would they translate it to the northwest side? That's what I'm kind of wondering.
Well, the northwest side, what you're likely to see is a building that's more built into the hill. So it's going to appear lower
From foothill?
from Foothill Boulevard. Right.
Laura, on that point, could somebody, if they had a long enough lot, could they stair step a building?
Yes, they
If
could.
had a desire
They could have multiple buildings.
So you could essentially have like multiple buildings all together. You could have a unit here and then a unit here, and when the grade permits, you could have a higher building from the foothill standpoint. So you could
Or if you're going to build one building, then it would be much more difficult.
you could create different levels depending on how the ground runs.
It would be lower at the north, at the
Could be lower.
west
So
side.
you're saying you could put more of your building subterranean if you wanted to keep it all level.
Where you see the height is where their lots are 25 foot.
But where would you measure that from? Would you measure it from the very lowest point on the southeast corner
Yes.
and take that all the way to the very highest part at the northwest?
At worst case, yes, we would measure where they put in a retaining wall. And chances are on something like this, you're going to see probably a combination of basements and retaining walls because they'll want
Where's
to
the
change
highest
the
point?
amount that they're retaining. The highest point is going to be it should be on, for most lots, it's going to be on the northwest corner.
Yeah, so that's the question. So the height would be from the southeast
It's
to
the
the
southeast
northwest.
to the northwest.
Right.
The most visible won't be the northwest.
No, the most
Be the-
visible is going to be your
It's
southeast.
sloping down. So the northeast corner,
Yes.
viewing from Foothill, will be the northeast corner.
Right.
As you're going into the ground,
Yeah,
as
because
you
that's
go
what you'd
west.
see, exactly.
From foothill, right.
Your packet also includes additional text changes to the zoning code. We're looking
This
at,
new fence overlay zone.
there is a new fence overlay zone.
There is?
We're looking at creating a new fence overlay zone, a new
I don't
height
want to
district
deal with
4.
fences.
What this is an enabling. It allows a fence overlay zone to be created if there's community interest. It would have to
The
be
whole
block
city
by
of
block.
Glendale needs a fence overlay zone.
The way we have it written right now, it would apply only in areas where there's a community plan, and there's actually identification in the neighborhoods in the community plan where they could have a fence overlay. And it would be block by block. A block would have to get together and petition, say, yes, they all agree that they would want to have one, and then there's standards that would be in the zoning code to allow it if you were to approve this ordinance.
Just for that area, just for that zone?
Right, it would just be in North Glendale, in the residential zones in North Glendale.
What about the rest of Glendale?
At this time, the fence overlay district would require a community plan adoption, and so far, North Glendale would be the only community plan we're proposing at this time.
Would that be similar to where you want to get restricted parking and the whole block or whatever by a petition, 75% whatever?
Similar to like the special setback ordinance procedure that we have right now.
And then do we specify at this point what would and wouldn't be allowed, or is that something that would be determined by the block?
Right now, there are standards for the fence. They're basic standards. They would have to apply. They would be subject to design review. But right now, it would be, this ordinance here would allow it to occur, but then each individual fence, as somebody would come in, they would have to apply for it, and it would be subject to review. And we also have some changes to the Montrose Shopping Park permitted uses to allow banks and financial institutions on the first floor. I know we've seen a number of variances in the past for that, so we'd be remedying that.
What is chart housekeeping again?
This is where we know that we have banks on the first floor in Montrose Shopping Park. So we're just adding those to the permitted use charts. Right now, it's a conditional use, and we've never noticed a problem with the banks, so we consider it housekeeping.
Okay.
For zoning map changes, I'll go over those. The main one is Foothill Boulevard. We're proposing that a commercial hillside zone, a new commercial hillside zone, replace the C3-1 zone for the entire length of Foothill Boulevard. We also have a series of small, we call them split zones, where right now existing use has 2 zones on the lot, and we're proposing to fix those by creating one zone so it would be standard across the lot, and it would follow the existing property lines. And so there's an explanation of those in your packet and a number of maps. We're also looking at extending the Montrose Shopping Park. This would be taking it from Las Palmas toward the west to include the Trader Joe's site, and there would be no changes to the zoning on the north side of Honolulu. And then we're also proposing that we change the zone in Spar Heights on the west side of Ocean View Boulevard.
Rosemont? Was that Rosemont? Can you go back one?
That's Trader Joe's.
Orange? No, it's Orangedale.
Yeah, this is Sunset Avenue, this is Orangedale, the library, and the fire station, and then this is the Trader Joe's site, and we're looking at extending it to include Trader Joe's.
That's not the school over there, is it?
No.
Oh, there's no school.
School is up the street from
Is it? It's further up?
Sisters Academy.
No, the MCMS.
That's further down.
Further down, but on the
It's
north
on
side.
Rosemont. It's on Rosemont, actually.
Yeah, no, this isn't as far as Rosemont. And in Spar Heights, we're looking at creating a new height district, Height District 4 for the C3. That would limit the height on the west side of Ocean View adjacent to the single-family homes to a maximum of 35 feet, and that would be right in this area down to approximately Arlington.
What is it there now?
Right now, it is C3-1, the same zoning as on Foothill with a 50-foot height limit.
We already had a problem with it. One establishment in there that was too high, right? About a year ago. They were
I
doing
know that there was
remodel of
a
building.
dry cleaners proposal that people, This would prevent a height issue if this were approved. Right now, we also have general plan amendments. We have a circulation element amendment, historic preservation element amendment, recreation element amendment, and the land use element amendment. Again, I've mentioned those. Those are necessary in order to allow a community plan to occur. And it also, we have a requirement under state law now that for circulation, we have to address complete streets anytime we do a general plan amendment. And so we would be adding that. We're proposing to add that with this proposal. And then the final implementation measure we have are comprehensive design guidelines. As you're aware, we have a variety of design guidelines in the city right now, but they're not coordinated. This is our proposal to create one citywide comprehensive design guideline. And that brings us to the recommendations. I know we had a lot of them. The first one would be to adopt the negative declaration that we've prepared for this project. We also have a resolution to adopt amendments to the general plan and a resolution to adopt the North Glendale Community Plan. Items 2 and 3, those are the ones that, or A, B, or B and C on this, are the ones that are necessary from a general plan perspective. And then we would have zoning to implement the general plan. Those would be the following items. We have item 4, which is, I listed it here as 1D here, but that's item 4. That would be an introduction of commercial hillside zone with a 42-foot maximum height as recommended by the Planning Commission. And we've also included options for your consideration for the 35-foot maximum and the combination 35-foot, 50-foot maximum. At item 7, we've also included a recommendation for zoning map amendments. And we did include an alternative, which was included in the packet considered by the Planning Commission, although they did not recommend it. That would be to increase height in Indian Springs from 245 feet from 35 feet now, because across the street from that is now a 50-foot height limit. And then we have 1F, the resolution to adopt comprehensive design guidelines. That concludes staff's presentation, and we have a number of people here who are available to answer questions.
Mr. Weaver?
Okay, if we want to assure that the view from Foothill on the south side, that no establishment would be more than 2 stories high, and that be varying, then we should consider the 42-foot height limitation, because you can't get to 3 stories.
As
You
viewed
can
from
either-
Foothill.
You can get 1 or 2, depending on the design and the topography, but you won't end up with a 3rd story with a 42 compromise.
That would be correct, as viewed from Foothill, and it would also allow some of the existing buildings that are already built on Foothill that appear to be 1 story but are actually 2. Some of those would actually have an opportunity to add an additional floor if we went with a 42-foot height alternative.
What if we go with the 35-foot alternative?
If you went with a 30-foot height alternative, some of the new buildings that would be proposed may be able to reach 2 stories on Foothill, maybe, but the majority of the existing structures that are there would not be able to add an additional floor.
So that would not prompt any kind of improvement of the street and the buildings if we
Be very
do
restrictive.
35.
Be very restrictive.
It would restrict the flexibility of designers to deal with the site if it was a 35-foot. Again, with a higher height limit, they would have more flexibility to address the topographic constraints that exist on Foothill.
And the community group agreed on the 42-foot, is that correct?
No, we had no agreement at all with the heights. That was the one issue that we had no agreement with the advisory committee. In fact, the advisory committee didn't consider a 42-foot height. They considered the 35-foot height limit, they considered a 50-foot, and they considered the combination 35-50.
And when did the 42 come up? How did that?
The 42-foot height option came from the Planning Commission. It was actually proposed by the CV Chamber of Commerce.
Okay. Oh, because like certain parts of La Crescenta were 42 feet, that's why.
That's correct. There's a community standards district in Los Angeles County, and they have 2 different height limits. One is a 35-foot height limit, and there's also a 42-foot height limit.
Okay. And the Planning Commission recommended the 42-foot height?
Yes, they did.
Any other questions before I go to the public? Okay, thank you. I have a number of cards. First speaker is Sherry Stubbs, to be followed by Nancy Camone. I opened it earlier, but I'll open it again if you like. Sherry Stubbs?
Madam Mayor. Chair.
Much to your dismay, I'm sure, I sent you one of my epistles last night. I mentioned in that email the notebook that we prepared for the Foothill Lumber Project, and I don't think Councilman Manukian received it, so everybody else had it, I believe. First, I would reiterate the point I made in note 1 of my email to you yesterday. Height impacts aesthetics. Certainly less than significant in the mitigated negative declaration is wrong. It is an issue outstanding that has not been agreed to. We have that, the MND versus the EIR. The 35-foot height limit resolves that problem. Second, addressing the Crescenta Valley Chamber's recommendation for a 42-foot height limit on Foothill Boulevard, I would refer to the prior statements of Sharon Raghavashari, who has been ill and could not be here tonight. Mrs. Raghavashari is co-author of the Community Standards District for Foothill Boulevard in unincorporated La Crescenta. The CSD was unanimously approved by both the Los Angeles County Planning Commission and the Los Angeles County Board of Supervisors. The provisions of the CSD are not subjective design guidelines, but are written rules and regulations that must be adhered to by prospective developers. The CSD provides for a 42-foot height limit in the eastern portion of the boulevard adjacent to La Cañada. However, it is not a true 42 feet, as the CSD further requires that 3 of the 4 sides of the structure must employ roof forms that fall within the 42 feet, such as a false-pitched roof. Thus, the actual height of the roof, i.e. a flat roof, must be lower than 42 feet. Using a flat roof as the example is appropriate, as flat roofs are allowed by the North Glendale Community Plan, and as they are the roof of choice for commercial developers, they will undoubtedly be uniformly used. The 35-foot 50-foot proposal is totally unacceptable. The footprint percentages would actually amount to considerably more than stated. Reason, community goals of continuity and compatibility, as well as our facts that we have presented, show that a 35-foot height limit is the right height limit for Foothill Boulevard. Thank you.
Ms. Stubbs, I just have a question for you. First of all, I appreciated your email. You don't have to apologize for it. So then, is it your position and Sharon's position that you wouldn't want second stories on Foothill? Because it's my understanding that the 42 feet allows only 2 stories, and the 35 feet would restrict a lot of these buildings to only 1 story. I just want to be sure that we're talking about the same thing.
Right. No, it's my understanding 35 feet can be done. As Laura said, she felt the existing buildings would be restricted, but not new development. Is that right, Laura?
Come on up, Laura. It's okay. Because this is a very important issue, and I want to be sure that everyone's talking about the same thing. It's one thing to talk about numbers, but what we're really talking about are floor levels, I think.
I think for the majority of the 35-foot level, you're looking at a maximum of 2 stories is visible from Foothill. Where 42 feet, you may, on some of the buildings that are existing, be able to get an additional floor. But 35, you're looking at 1 and 2 floors, especially on the south side. 42 will give you 2 floors. That makes...
in some cases, 35 would only give you 1 floor?
In some cases, this is as viewed from Foothill. So you would have potentially the basement option. You would have almost a floor below the level of Foothill, but then you would have a level above it. And the problem is, depending on where that level is and how tall the first floor is, a lot of people, they want to have visibility from Foothill. They'll put a commercial height on Foothill. So you'll see 15 to 17 feet along Foothill for your first floor commercial. Then if you have your... Stephanie, correct me if I'm wrong, but then you're going to have 2 to 3 feet minimum between the floors for equipment. Then you're going to have another floor, figure another 10 to 12 feet, plus then you have a parapet. You're now over your 35 feet. And that's the concern that we would have for some of the existing buildings on Foothill, is that, especially on the south side, because of the topo, 35 feet is going to be very restrictive on the type of building you're going to get. And I think we want a high-quality commercial building. If you have somebody come in and try to basically squeeze the code, we've seen that in the past. You may encourage a lesser quality building, and I think we would rather give more room to a designer to accommodate the floors, to have more flexibility, so we actually can encourage a higher quality building. But still, again, you're only looking at a 7-foot difference, and that difference would make the difference between having an additional floor and not on the south side. So
can 42 feet give you 3 stories?
No.
42 feet can give you 3 stories on the north side. On the south side, because of the topo, no, you'd be looking at 2 floors as visible from Foothill. It's possible they would technically have an additional floor, but it would be a basement. You would not see it from Foothill.
But to pencil it out, it may be that you need to be able to get that second floor in, but financially pencil it out. We restrict it to only 1 floor. Like you said, we'll get less quality maybe, because you can't put more into it because they don't have the space. So they have the ability to get to 2, to get a better quality building.
So rather than get into a discussion, I just wanted clarity from Ms. Stubbs that, so you're not arguing that because you want the 35 feet, you're not saying that you only want 1-story buildings on Foothill?
Absolutely not.
Okay, because that's what staff is telling us will happen in many cases. So I think we need to figure out up here kind of what that number is and how that would work, if you understand what I'm saying.
I don't think that the existing buildings on Foothill Boulevard...
Microphone.
Sorry. I don't think that the existing buildings on Foothill Boulevard, they are there. We have talked in the advisory committee and in our sessions that we will be doing new facades, improving those buildings, not tearing them down and building new. So I don't think that applies, the height applies to the existing buildings. I think we're primarily discussing new development. I don't think they're going to be torn down for new development.
We don't know. Okay.
We don't know.
Thank you.
All right.
Okay, Nancy Camo, followed by Susan Bolin.
Good evening, council members. I'm Nancy Camo, and I'm a resident of North Glendale. I want to talk to you from the perspective of the residents. We are not that conversant in all of the ins and outs of the zoning code, height limits, what a businessman can build or not build. The only thing that we are looking at is proposals like the Foothill Lumber Building. How many of those are now going to be allowed under what height limits? We're looking at the possibility of other buildings like that coming onto Foothill Boulevard, and how can we prevent that? Even a one-story building on Foothill, if it's one story on Foothill, in the back can be two-story, which is overwhelming to the people living behind those buildings. We're looking at that and thinking that already we have examples in many of the blocks in that 1 mile section of Glendale, of Foothill in Glendale, where backyards back up into two-story walls. There are several instances of that, and those pictures are in the planning draft. So what I want to just reiterate is, in looking at the vision statement, which all of the advisors, all of the people on the advisory committee agreed to, the gist of that statement is that we want to preserve what we have there now. We do not want to see a lot of new development. Try to work with the topography, try to work with the people that are there, the houses that are there, what already exists, and make it compatible. We don't feel that there's been enough effort made to preserve the uniqueness of that area, which has been so acknowledged in the plan. It almost seems as if there is one approach and then it's ignored because we get into all the ins and outs of numbers and height limits and square footages and all of those things. I just want to say, from the perspective of the hundreds of people that I talk to, no Foothill Lumbers, no big 2-3-story buildings, please. Thank you very much.
Thank you. Susan Bolin, followed by Mike Mohill.
Good evening. I'm Susan Bolin, and I'm a member of the North Glendale Community Plan Advisory Committee. I sent you an email last week, so I won't go over the whole thing. I hope you had a chance to take the tour of our city that I recommended. I'd like to restate, though, that I do support the community plan and the comprehensive guidelines that are before you tonight. I do request that you do look carefully at the height limits. And let me kind of clarify, Mr. Weaver, for you. If you're looking on Foothill, a one-story building is perfect. But in the example of Jay's Maintenance, if you go behind the building, it looks pretty massive. The basement area and then the first floor. So since I live down the street from that, I do envision looking up at the mountains, and if I were looking at Jay's Maintenance, envisioning a second floor from Foothill is too big for me because I can't see the mountains. It totally blocks out the mountains. So for me, one story is the right amount on Foothill on the south side, and in the back, a step down and using the retaining walls as the planning department proposed. So hopefully that helped clear it up for you. It's really important. One story on Foothill and then two behind, but no three.
Thank you. Thank you. Mike Mohill, followed by Ellen Cadwalader. Sorry, it's late.
Okay. Good evening, Mayor and Friedman, council members, and the viewing audience. My name is Mike Mohill. I don't live in North Glendale. I live in East Glen Oaks Canyon. But I admire the people in this room who are trying to make their community unique, in a sense, who they are. They're not the residents of East Glen Oaks or South Glendale or Rancho area, they're very unique people. And if they had a council representative or a council district there, they've had somebody who has their ear all the time. And this project would have been forwarded to this city council years ago, not today. That's the sad part about this group behind me. I'm sure I don't want to say I feel their pain, I don't. But I know that if made this much effort to organize meetings, not once, but 10, 20 times, they want to get it right. And if they had a council representative, he would hear them.
Mr. Mohill, can you please restrict your comments to the North Glendale plan and not talk about
this is all part of it.
council districts and topics that are not contrary to this?
Madam, because if they had a representative, they would have it. So, having said that, I admire the people in this room who want to have limitations on the height of the buildings along Foothill Boulevard and any other thing that concerns them, because they are a unique community. Thank you.
Najarian?
And I know perhaps I'm out of line, but I just want to remind people at home, Mr. Mohill, this is a process that the council agreed to go through each and every neighborhood and region of the city. This is not only the north part of the city, this is where we started, and we are going to work our way throughout the entire city. So I just want that to be clear so there's no misconceptions. Mr. Mohill, you should have known that. You've been a council watcher for quite some time. This is developed by our planning staff, Mr. Hagani, who presented it to council, and we wholeheartedly agreed that we're going to go through the entire city and look at it neighborhood by neighborhood, region by region, to address the particular issues that the neighbors and the constituents believe in.
Thank you. Ellen Cadwalader, followed by Bill Weissman. And Bill Weissman's my last card.
Thank you, Councilman Frieden, council members. My name's Ellen Cadwalader, and I am a resident up in North Glendale and who moved to the area because I wanted what it had to offer, different than the downtown area, as we were talking about earlier. That's what I wanted, was a residential area. I would like to see the 35-foot limit set, especially for the south side of the boulevard. It's known that the proposed expansion of the Foothill Lumber Building was denied because it was found to be incompatible with the neighborhood and would begin to change the neighborhood. That's why this specific plan for North Glendale was requested. They wanted to set a plan that would accommodate and enhance and include the facets of this specific area. And though we certainly appreciate all the work the Planning Commission's done, all the retaining walls and all the setbacks, but the special quality and uniqueness of this area is due in such a large part to the inclusion of open views and the connection to the surrounding natural beauty. Also, the incredible sense of community that the area has is also so much tied to this connection to the inclusion of the natural surroundings. To allow these to be blocked off or cut off can start to change the uniqueness of the area. Also, of course, the affected quality of life, not only for all who live in the valley or the boulevard, but for the people living directly adjacent or below the area, as we've talked about, due to the topography. Also, the value of their homes, the monetary value of their homes. I just feel that we have, with this plan, we have the chance to preserve the quality that's unique to this area. And why would we want to turn it suddenly into one more Anytown, USA, when we can have a chance to preserve it being special? We want to see development, but we want it to be the right kind, the kind that enhances what the area has to offer, rather than possibly destroy it. So, thank you.
Thank you. Bill Weissman's my last card.
Good evening, Mayor Friedman, council members, city staff, and the public. My name is Bill Weissman from far north Glendale, animated. I wanted to start off this evening by thanking our planning staff, most of whom are here tonight, under the able leadership of Mr. Hagani. They have worked very, very hard over the last 2 years to put this together, and countless hours of discussion and argumentation and actually educating each other, I think, about our different spheres of knowledge was very interesting. We had a chance to, I think, educate the planning department about what it is that makes our part of town unique, and they in turn had a chance to educate us about issues like zoning and planning and things that we may not have been all that familiar with. And to the point of whether there was discussion on having different height limits on the north and south side of Foothill, there most definitely was. And I think one of the things we learned from the planning department is that professional planners are somewhat uncomfortable with doing that kind of zoning in terms of consistency. So what I would like to talk about, and I'll start off by saying I do support the 35-foot height limit. What I'd like to talk about are a couple of things. The first one is land uses for second and third stories of buildings. Now, we know you're going to have retail on the bottom floor, you're going to have service-type businesses like laundromats or what have you on the first floor. But who would be primarily occupying second and third floors of buildings that are developed, assuming that those second and third floors existed? That space is primarily going to be office space. It's not really all that suitable for retail or other types of service businesses. So I think primarily if you have a 2 or 3 story building, you're going to be seeing medical and general office space predominating as the uses on the second and third floors. And right now in our area, those are 2 uses that we don't really have any need for. We already have a great deal of vacant office and general medical office space for lease. And so that's not a use that needs to be increased in the community. And the last thing I'll mention is that even if you have a 35-foot height limit, that doesn't mean necessarily that buildings are only precluded to be 35 feet high. You can get a variance for the height, and this was done, the project that's across the street from the Verdugo Hills Hospital, which is in a C2 Height District 1 zone where buildings are limited to 36 feet in height, and that building was granted a variance to be 52 feet tall. So you can have buildings taller than 35 feet if you do vote for that limit. Thank you.
Thank you. That's my last card. I'm going to close the public hearing.
May I
Mr. Weaver?
explore a couple questions?
Sure.
As it is now, you could put a 20, 30, 40-foot retaining wall on the property line, right?
That's correct. If you could design it, you could build it.
Right. Engineers could do it. Okay. Now, under any of the new, we're requiring a 15-foot setback from the property line,
Yeah, the building would be set back.
at least 15 feet.
That would be correct.
That does change the angle. You're looking uphill, for instance. Okay. Again, it was said, looking at the drawings, 35-foot, first floor and a second floor, 42, first and second, possible third. Now, before when I was asking you, you said 42 would allow probably a better quality because you could do a first and second.
Right,
You could do that under 35 also.
You may be able to do that under 35.
Okay.
But the existing buildings there, if they wanted to retrofit and add an additional floor, then they may not be able to. And I did want to say a correction too, because we showed a worst case was the 2 5-foot walls. There actually is a provision for 3 retaining walls, but they would all be under 5 feet if someone were to take that option. So I did want to, there was a correction I did have on that. What we illustrated here was the worst case. It still would be a maximum of 10-foot retaining. However, if somebody wanted to put a 5-foot wall in and a 2-foot wall and a 3-foot wall, they could.
They could.
Yeah.
To maximize their pad area, they would do 5 foot.
Correct.
Okay. Now, what if, and I can't tell square footages, what if on this plan, the second floor had to be set back? In other words, the frontage on Foothill would remain the 12-foot, but to the rear, it would be only half the depth of the lot. I mean, if the neighbors down below look up, their angle looking up would improve by the second floor, not protruding clear to the back. In other words, in a clear rectangle. Now, would it be feasible to put a second floor on if that was done?
So if they required this to be set back here, so this would be not built,
That's right.
that would be similar to the proposal that we have. That's the 35-foot 50 combination, where essentially, and that is sort of what that proposal is.
Right.
Like this, the only difference being the height. So if this whole thing were
That
lower,
was brought down to 42.
yeah.
Then, if the neighbors below are spending most of their time looking to the north and looking across the canyon to the south, where their real view is, that'd be, but, and I don't know how many neighbors downhill are spending their time looking uphill.
Well, I think mostly the people who are to the south of Foothill have the nice view of the mountains to the south, not...
South.
Some may have a view to the north, but I think the view to this, like when you're driving along Foothill, you have the nice vista toward the south.
Because there's going to be no perfect solution. Somebody is not going to like what is done.
That is correct.
Does anyone know the height that Jay's Maintenance was brought up? Does anyone know the height of Jay's Maintenance from the back?
Oh.
24?
Is it
I believe
24?
it's 24 feet because we measure from the low point in the back. And I believe as visible from Foothill, it's approximately 10 feet tall, 8 to 10 feet.
I'm looking at the back side of it, and from the residences, you really can't see the building.
Yeah.
If you look at, from these other residences,
Right.
and if you look, you really can't see the
Yeah, there's a
building.
nice long hedge along there.
Right.
Well, we're also proposing a landscape buffer. And so if you're very close to the building, you'll see landscape, the buffer. If you're farther away, well, then you may have a view of the building, but you'll also see landscaping there too.
There's a driveway in the back of Jay's Maintenance. Does anyone know how wide that driveway is? Is it like 20 feet?
Very wide. Very wide. They've had mixers even down.
They've had it's about 2 cars, 2.5 cars.
Yeah, it's big.
So it's about 20 feet, maybe? I'm just trying to gauge the 15 feet proposal and what I'm seeing in actual.
I believe this is very similar to Jay's Maintenance. It's across the street from it. Unfortunately, I didn't get the whole
Is it on Dunsmore?
driveway. I believe it's right adjacent to it,
Yes,
across the
I
street
see it.
from it.
Okay.
And it's a similar situation where you have about 12 feet visible from the street, and then the building itself is about 24 feet.
And the
Does-
back is 24 feet?
Yeah, we would measure the height as being 24 feet. You can see they have garages, a basement underneath.
And how wide is the parking lot behind it? It must be about 20 feet because if the cars...
They do have a row of parking behind it. I'm not sure of the ultimate width of that site. But there is a row of parking.
Can you see it?
Well, generally you have 18 feet for parking depth, and then the clearance is 25 for the backing,
Okay, so it's about 30 feet between...
give or take, a little more like 40,
Okay.
35 to 40.
So in this case, if these property owners decide to tear this down with the proposal from the city, from planning and the La Crescenta Chamber, they could basically go back all the way to halfway through the parking lot and go up 42 feet from there.
They'd still have their parking requirements. They may not be able to do that.
Well, they can do like an underground parking.
They would have, they would,
And-
wherever the building came out of the ground, depending on how they designed it,
And they can,
that would be 42 feet tall.
because I can see the residences behind, and there is a retaining wall. Yeah.
Can't see anything, no matter how big the building is.
Yeah, there is a retaining wall, and if they go 15 feet and they go up 42 feet, that would be a pretty high building, actually.
If they were to
On
knock
that.
that building down, would they have to and they have an existing retaining wall, they could leave the existing retaining wall, or would they have to tear that down and build by our new standards for retaining wall?
I believe they can leave it, and the rest of it would have to comply with the new standards.
Well, yeah, because that's
The retaining wall is existing, and chances are it already exceeds the height that we would be allowing.
Right, so it's not considered part of the building or anything like that?
No, it's not. It would only be new changes that they're proposing to do. And I'm not sure what the grade differential is in the front, so I couldn't tell you with
But the thing
quite a few feet.
Again, Laura, I want to go back to something. The 42-foot could end up maybe giving us better quality construction.
Well, absolutely. It gives you more flexibility to have more space in between floors. We all know developers want to maximize the code. So if you make it where there's an opportunity where they could squeeze an extra floor in, they tend to try and do that. And again, that's if you look at the design guidelines that are included in your packet, they're included for not only the neighborhoods, but then also citywide. We have a lot of direction for having adequate floor plates and floor heights for commercial buildings, just to make sure that we have higher quality buildings. I know you've had before you issues where people have built residential units and commercial units where they didn't have adequate floor height, and there's been a lot of concerns with the quality of construction. We would have an identical concern if you have a code where someone would be encouraged to squeeze an extra floor in.
So with the 42, we have enough constraints within the system to make sure we're not getting that third floor, try to kick it in there or something like that.
We feel we have a lot of design direction in there, which would require a high-quality building. If you're going to require roof pitch, again, that affects the height. We think there's enough constraints in there and design guidance that would direct somebody to have a high-quality building. Well, a high-quality building is going to have more space between the floor plates.
Mr. Starbird.
On the question of the existing retaining walls and being able to keep those, I don't know how often that occurs along Foothill in the rear, but let's say you have a situation like Paradise Ford where there was a very large retaining wall that would significantly exceed these standards, and they want to build on it. Do you then measure the height from the existing ground?
No, we would measure the height for the building is where we would measure it, and if they're going to change the topography, then we would measure it from the change.
Well, let's say you have a 15-foot let's say a 15-foot retaining wall, and they scrape the building. Would the new height standards apply from where the existing grade is?
Yeah, your building, wherever it comes out of the ground, that's going to be the existing, assuming the existing retaining wall, your height's going to be measured from wherever that building comes out of the ground.
Okay.
Jay's maintenance is 24 feet, right?
Yeah, it's very similar to this building right here.
Right. If we allow 35 feet, that's an additional 11 feet, right? So
Yes.
Jay's maintenance could build an additional floor on top of what they have.
Right. It would
And
be
I'm not talking about the building, I'm just talking in terms of the building envelope. They can move back another 20 feet, maybe.
It would be very difficult for them to build an extra floor under 35 feet because we require screening of the rooftop equipment, and we also want additional commercial floors, so we would want at least 10 feet plus an additional 2 for clearance between the floor, plus you're looking at another 4 feet for clearance. So the potential is there, but it would be very unlikely.
Is that building a two-story building, or is it?
It's a two-story building.
It's a two-story building?
Very similar to this one, where you have a level underneath Foothill. In this case, they're garages, but it could easily be an
So at
office.
35 feet, they couldn't put a second story, another story on there?
At 35 feet, it would be difficult for them. I'm not saying it's impossible, but we would need to see the design, but it would be difficult for them to put an additional floor where you have adequate second story at a commercial standard. You'd be having a very low ceiling for your second floor if you were to build it. Chances are, if they were going to do that here for a building like this, they would see substantial changes. Even on Jay's maintenance, as it is right now, there's rooftop equipment which is visible So that's not screened because it was an older building. So if you're going to get a new one, you're also going to look at rooftop equipment screening. It adds definitely to the height of a structure.
At 42 feet, you're almost doubling the size of this building in terms of building height and in terms of bulk with the setbacks that are being proposed. So,
Well, and then the other thing I would point out, too, is that we do have our parking standards. Many of the lots that are up off of Foothill Boulevard are very narrow and shallow. And so, as we've seen in the past, some of the ones that were on our slide where you could see where potentially a higher building could be built, there really is a restriction because they may not be able to park the building to have an additional expansion. So the zoning code has a lot of variables, especially when you have the topo that we have on Foothill. So I would just say that every building on Foothill is slightly different.
Mr. Najarian?
Okay, I have a few questions. I know the Foothill Lumber was perhaps the lightning rod that activated the community, and it was clear that that proposed building was out of character. How tall was that building?
It was 50 feet. You couldn't build Foothill Lumber under any of the proposals that we have.
It was 50 feet. And from Foothill looking south, how tall was it?
It was 42 feet from Foothill.
Foothill looking south, it was 42 feet. And how many stories was that?
Three stories.
They could fit 3 stories in the 42-foot from the Foothill side. I mean, my problem in dealing with these heights is, for instance, in this building here, just because it's up on the screen, if we had set a 12-foot limit, height limit, it would be flat on Foothill Boulevard, right?
Yeah.
Correct?
Correct.
I mean, it'd be street level, basically. I don't think that, I mean, when you say to a landowner, well, we're going to let you have a 12-foot height limit, 1 story, I don't think we're really letting him use his property by saying that it's got to be, it's going to be below grade, and by the way, it's more or less like a basement. If it was my point of view that I wanted a property owner to be able to put 2 stories, and I know that there's all sorts of stories. You can have one of your things at an 18-foot height for a story. But a typical 2-story building from the Foothill side, what would that height be? 30 feet? 20 feet?
24, and then the roof, 26.
25? I'm referring to my designers.
Okay.
How much?
Shouldn't we be looking at these heights from the Foothill side? Because the topography is so varied. Why should one property owner be at a disadvantage because the slope is greater behind his building versus one whose slope is less steep?
But how do you design a...
The answer to that question, if I may, is that because we still have to measure the height limit in conjunction with the next door property owners, and that goes back to, because if we wanted to measure everything from Foothill, then we would not be taking into account the properties south of Foothill, where the most impact is. So we really, by necessity, also we need to have one standard height measurement for the whole zoning code, and that's the one we use.
But I would say we do have design guidelines, which are part of the package, too. It's not just zoning. The reason we have a community plan to describe what we want to see in the neighborhood and describe what we want to see along the streets is because we recognize it's more than just the zoning code. There's a feel that you want to get on the street and what's important to the neighborhood. In this case, in the district, the commercial district, we wanted to get that across, too. Right now, when the Foothill Lumber went through, we really didn't have a tool that explained that the design review board could rely on. They didn't have detail. They didn't know what a future vision for Foothill was because we didn't have that document, that level of a document.
A couple of the nicest buildings I've seen on Foothill. One is the It's the Ralphs, where that Los Gringos, it was one of your slides where you were...
The north side?
It's on the north side. That could not be built on the south side under almost any
That's
configuration. Further down in La Cañada at 1030 Foothill Boulevard, it's like a Dilbeck building. It's very nice Spanish.
The white one that's
Yes.
on the corner, yes.
Could that be built in La Crescenta? I think that's almost
I
2
believe-
stories.
I believe that it's on the south side.
Yes.
And it's white. I believe there's...
But it's rather flat there. I mean, it flattens out when you get to the La Cañada portion.
Right, but I believe that that has a greater slope in the rear of it where the parking lot is. So I do believe I know it's over 35 feet. I'm not sure if it hits 42.
I mean, as I've gone up and down Foothill, those are 2 of the buildings that I see that I think are in character, both in terms of architecture and in scale, for what Foothill Boulevard should be. And we're saying that we can't build, that by the current guidelines, well, the proposed at least, either the 42 or the 35, that type of use could not be put in the Glendale portion.
Well, if it's the Dilbeck building I'm thinking of, and it's very close to that Hillside Cafe.
It's
About a
at Chevy
block.
Chase, basically, Chevy Chase and Foothill.
I believe that one is...
If I may, after consulting with our team that's residents of La Crescenta, we think the Dilbeck building is about 44 feet, plus or minus, is measured from the backside.
From the backside.
And the building at Pennsylvania and Lowell that we introduced, that's about 45 feet as measured from the sidewalk to the top of that circular rotunda.
It's almost 3 stories.
It's basically a 3-story building as viewed from the street side.
Yeah, this is the one I'm talking about. Well, this is a nice building, but they're fortunate because they're on the north side. South side, the back side of that would be 50, I mean, depending on the slope, of course. I mean, it would be very high.
Right. And in the case of this example where Los Rapidos, the Mexican eatery, that's actually at the parking lot levels. So when you're up in the parking lot where the supermarket is...
Oh, that's right.
They've terraced up
This
the
is the
land.
back side, basically, of...
Right.
But in their example for the 42-foot, on the Foothill side, it's 33 feet.
I mean, I appreciate this type of development, this type of project. This isn't as nice in my, but that's a 36 foot there.
Yes.
They put a partial basement in. They had to get the parking, so they went underneath.
Okay, good.
Mr. Quintero?
Well, I'd like to just make some general comments. I mean, when I look at Foothill Boulevard and the development and look at the Crescenta Valley in general, I look at this long strip of service-type businesses, lots of little schools now, of course, the shopping centers, strip malls, etc. It's obvious to me that's what people in this part of the world want to keep. They don't want overdeveloped 3-story buildings or maybe even 2-story buildings. They want to keep this type of commercial zone. Glendale is totally different. Colorado's got one look and one scene, and then we have Brand and Glen Oaks, etc. The residents of this community, I think, want this 35-foot limit because I think they know that anything other than a 35-foot limit is going to lead to more and more dense development, period. And I'm not persuaded that doing a 42-foot limit means that somehow we're going to get a better design. Quite the contrary. I think all it's going to do is going to be to pack in more development and more dense type of usage. So I'm very happy with 35 feet. I think 35 feet is going to work just fine. Will it work for each individual parcel, each individual idea? Maybe not. But overall, in terms of the entire Foothill community, I think 35 feet ties in real well. That's basically the majority of most of the zoning from what I can see. So I'm quite comfortable with 35 feet. I don't want to extend it to 42 or any of the other options.
Let me ask a question. Good point, Frank. When we were doing our downtown projects, we thought we had a height limit, and then they come in with this SB 1818 and all these other bonuses and all that. Would any of that apply to our standards on Foothill?
Yes, they would.
Well, that's a big difference. I mean, what type of, despite our, let's say we set it at 35, what could a developer come in with? There's affordable and there's...
If they come with a mixed-use project, for example, that has an affordable housing component, and they meet some of the criteria, and they ask for the concessions, yes, they could ask.
So what would we, in terms of height, what sort of height concessions would they be entitled to?
Well, they would ask for the height concession that they would need in order to provide the X number of affordable housing units as part of their project.
And we were obligated to do that?
Yes.
With the caveat, though, that if the city could show that they didn't need that to provide the affordable housing, the city could substitute another development standard waiver in lieu of that, then the city would have the discretion to say no, but that burden would be on the city, wouldn't be on the developer.
Is it only affordable housing as a entitlement issue? Okay. Because we threw in the other ones in our own...
Yes, actually what you're talking about in the downtown specific plan, we had come up with an affordable housing component, density and height bonus ourselves, and then when we were getting close to approving the DSP, SB 1818 was introduced. Therefore, we added it as a component that could be either this or that. So that's the difference.
So if a developer wanted to come in and put retail on the bottom, but affordable units on top, potentially he may be entitled to an additional entitlement to accommodate his...
Potentially, yes. Up to 2 concessions they could ask for. And usually height and density, or sometimes height and parking are the ones that they ask for.
Well, and I also want to add that 35 feet really is the beginning, because an individual property owner, if he has the desire and just insist on going over the 35 feet, he can ask for a variance. He can absolutely look for, there's something about his property that's so unique, that's so different, it's going to be such a detriment that he has to be allowed to go to 38 or 40, whatever it is, he can ask for a variance. So...
Mr. Weaver?
I was going to say, the map you gave us, maximum height viewed from the street, assuming all the buildings are 42 foot, vast majority of it, you say, would be less than, 35 feet in height?
On the south side, correct.
On the south side.
As viewed from Foothill.
But then if we have the section 218...
Sorry?
Well, maybe what I was saying is correct, that we should be at 35 because of the potential. God bless. If somebody was going to come in and do what I was talking about, try to put housing above on Foothill, nice view lots, or view dwelling units to the south and to the north.
Are we zoned for housing on Foothill?
It's a C3 zone, which does allow housing, but just not on the first floor.
Thank you. I'm going to make a few comments. Laura, you can sit down. First of all, I attended a couple of the North Glendale community meetings, and I want to echo what a few people have said about thanking the community for their participation. I mean, those meetings were amazing. We had so many people there, and everybody was so engaged and so concerned and gave so much of their time. And it's really a testament to how much the residents of that area care about that area. And it is a very unique area. It's a beautiful part of Glendale. It's very special, and it has its own character. And I completely get why they want to preserve that existing character. And I agree with it. I want to preserve that character. It's what makes North Glendale special. I also am proud to say that I was on the design review board when Foothill Lumber came in front of my board. I think I was the chair at the time, and voted against the project. And I think not only at that design review board, but also when it was appealed to the appeals board. And, you know, the problem was really the zoning, which allowed the 50-foot use, which, I mean, the design wasn't a great design either for the site, but no matter how you cut it, for them to maximize that 50 feet was leading to an incompatible design. And you really can't blame the developer. They were told they could do 50 feet. So I think that reducing the height will give more clarity to developers so that they know what's going to be acceptable, so they don't run into these kinds of issues where all of a sudden they propose a project that's within the zoning and the neighborhood is out there with pitchforks and the developer doesn't understand why. Hopefully this will prevent that from happening. It'll give the developers a lot more guidance along with the design guidelines of what's expected if they're going to develop in that neighborhood. The height is a really difficult thing when you're dealing with topography like this because it's really hard to know. I don't think that a lot of the people that were here today really want to only have one-story buildings, and yet because of the topography, what gives you a one-story building on one site could give you a three-story building on another site. And because of that, my inclination is to stick with the 35-foot height limit and to allow the variance process to work for sites where they can do something that is compatible but requires more height. I know it will restrict some of the flexibility of the developers. I also believe that it will stop a lot of development, and even projects that would have been good projects might be stopped because of this. But there is the risk, and even with the design review board process, there's a risk. And I'll point to the building that's on Verdugo, right below Honolulu, which is an empty medical building that was not in front of my board. It's in front of the other board. And to this day, I can't understand how that building was approved. And it's completely incompatible for the area in scale and mostly in design. So it shows that even with the design review board process, things can slip through the cracks. So I do hope that, I will support the 35 and not the 42. Mr. Najarian brings up a very good point about our state mandates and how developers can ask for density bonuses in certain situations, and we have no control over that. That's a concern as well. But I do hope that developers that do have good projects on lots that are unusual topographically, that would be compatible, do use the variance process and allow that to work. And hopefully that will allow the good quality projects that do need a little bit more flexibility, but that would fit in to come to fruition.
Madam Mayor, since the last hour has been either 35 or 42, why don't you ask if there's a consensus here, then we can.
Let me ask first, Mr. Manukian had his hand up. And
Well, I haven't made any comments yet, but visually I understand better because I'm not in the development arena. Visually I understand better the heights and the ramifications of our actions up here. And I'm looking at Jay's maintenance, and I'm looking at the other building. I'm looking at that one, and as well as the Dilbeck building that is on Chevy Chase and Foothill. And my inclination is at 35 feet as well. I just think that at 42 feet, and with the setbacks that are being proposed, some of these buildings can be overwhelming to the neighbors. So I will support the 35-foot limit as well.
okay, do we have, sounds like we have consensus on that issue. Does somebody want to float motions based on the various?
I will move 9A, B, C,
Wait,
1. Have to do them
So
separately.
9A, 1, 2, 3, 4.
Or they listed.
How can he group these?
I've got them listed as 9A1 through 9.
And we can vote on them together?
We vote on them.
Oh, we have to take out number 4.
Yeah, 4
Sorry.
through 9 are introductions.
And 4, 5, or 6 are the options. So I think what
So-
I'm hearing is the option
Right.
on at 9A4 is where you're headed.
Right, 9A4.
No.
No, 9A5.
9A5.
Excuse me.
9A5.
Okay, so Mr. Quintero, would
City attorney's trying to sneak one in.
I will move.
apologize.
I will.
So we're just
move
going to vote on 9A5 first?
9A, 1, 2,
3.
3,
And
And 9.
and 9.
okay, we have a
Second.
motion for
Second.
9A, 1, 2, 3, and 9, and a second. Can we have a roll call, please?
Second was Councilmember Najarian or
Manukian.
Manukian. Thank you. Council members Manukian,
Yes.
Najarian,
Yes.
Quintero,
Yes.
Weaver,
aye.
Mayor Friedman.
Yes.
Okay, then I'll introduce the ordinance at 9A5,
At 35-foot height.
35-foot height maximum.
I was floating between 42 and 35, but after hearing all of the comments, 35.
And then what about 7 and 8?
Yeah, I think 7 and 8 are independent as well, and they need to be introduced as well. Those are
I'll
for the zone
introduce
maps.
the ordinance at 7, and then introduce the ordinance at 8.
Well, I would just clarify that 8 was not recommended by the Planning Commission, so if you wanted to go with the Planning Commission, you would probably just want to introduce Ordinance 7.
Okay, I'll introduce the ordinance at 7.
And you want to retract your introduction of ordinance at 9A, 8, and then we'll just go forward with those items.
All right, I'll do that.
Okay, the ordinances have been introduced.
Okay, and let me say I didn't get a chance to comment generally. Yeah, I'm very impressed with, number one, the staff. I'm always impressed with the staff, but in this particular case, they just did a fantastic job. I also attended a couple of the workshops. They did a tremendous job. And along with the staff, the people that are here this evening and others that worked on this, just ordinary citizens, some of whom I'd kind of seen for the first time, did a tremendous amount of work, attending all of the meetings, doing plenty of homework, plenty of research, and that to me tells me that they are very interested in what's going on in their community, and I think we've done the right thing tonight. I think we pretty well honored the residents of this section of Glendale, and I think the business entities and the property owners are going to do quite well. We're going to have some uniform conformity along the Crescenta Valley, and I think it's going to work to everyone's advantage.
Mr. Najarian.
And today, the folks of Northern Glendale have not one council representative, but they've got 5 working for them.
Good point. Okay, thank you. Next item.
Next item on the agenda is oral communications. This is a full 5-minute portion where discussion is limited to items not part of this agenda. Each speaker will be allowed 5 minutes. Council may question or respond to a speaker, but there will be no debate or decision. City manager may refer the matter to the appropriate department for an investigation and report.
Okay, before I start calling up the cards, I'm going to make a sort of an unusual little announcement because flipping through them, I see that we have a lot of speakers to talk about artificial turf. Most of, if not all of them, seem to be from outside of Glendale. And I just want to let them know that this issue was talked about and decided weeks ago. So you're welcome. We're happy to have you here. You're welcome to speak. But we're not going to be debating artificial turf, as far as I can see in this council, again in the near future. So I just wanted, just because you're from outside of the city, I wanted to be sure you kind of knew where we were on this. Okay, my first card is Patrick Bray, to be followed by Tom Shibuda.
Mayor Friedman, good evening, council members. In light of what you just said, then I guess my main purpose is to find out if Matt Barkley's going to come back next year for his the next season. Hoping.
I support artificial turf.
Well, I guess we are from out of town, so to speak. Again, I'm Patrick Bray. I am the owner of Nomo Turf, which is an installation dealer company based in Orange County, and we represent all Tiger Turf products. Tiger is one of the largest, in fact, the largest distributor of artificial turf in North America, and we're pleased to be one of their dealers. In just doing some background on the decision that you made a few months ago, I noticed that it had to do with chemicals, lead. I think I heard some of the folks that came up and voiced their point of view, and some had expressed issues with chemicals and lead and so on. So I thought I'd just kind of mention something about that. And also, if it's not about that and it's about aesthetics, which one would think it might be given that you're allowing it in the back and on the front, I thought I would speak to that too. So just a quick little point here. After the Consumer Product Safety Commission studied the risks of lead chromate in pigments that were previously once used to color synthetic turf, they wrote in 2008, young children are not at risk from exposure to lead in these fields. In fact, the U.S. synthetic turf industry has voluntarily reduced the use of lead chromate to at or near zero for all synthetic turf products, well below the standard legislated by the federal government for children's toys. So there's no issue there. And there are hundreds of studies, and we can furnish those, but it sounds like you've gone at length with this issue. But as it relates to the, as it relates to the quality and the aesthetics of the product, that's certainly something that we can help you with. In fact, we've assisted many HOAs over the years to commit standards, to get guidelines in place, to give them a comfort level as to the quality of the product that's being put in place. With the right protocol, you can require residents to get approval from planning officials to make sure that they have satisfied several conditions before installing the turf. It brings to mind a couple cities down in Orange County, Fountain Valley and Garden Grove, that were on the banning side. They had, for a period of time, banned artificial turf and had seen the light, so to speak, and had come around, given just the realities of the drought and the issues that we're having with regards to water. But they approved turf in March of 2010, and they set forth several requirements, such as the turf to have a minimum 8-year no-fade warranty, and it should be installed by a licensed professional. The yard must also incorporate some live plants in addition to the artificial turf. And not sure if one of the topics that you went through was AB 1881, which is going to be instituting some pretty strict guidelines as far as water runoff goes. And I know that we've experienced some of that down in Orange County. If you don't have artificial turf as an option, if you're watering your front yard that has regular grass and there's runoff off the sidewalk and then down into the sewers, you're going to be fined once the legislation hits from that rule or law. So artificial turf is a great solution for folks that are really trying to maintain a beautiful front yard but yet don't have the option. So that's just one local issue, AB 1881. Let's see here. That's really all I was going to say. I pulled some information off Glendale Water and Power, and a lot of it was just basically around the fact that there's zero tolerance for the runoff that's going to be coming up. It means homeowners would have to have a band of dirt buffering their lawn to the street to avoid the runoff. From an aesthetic standpoint, very ugly to have a 3-yard band of decomposed granite bordering up to your front lawn to avoid that water running off the sidewalk down into the sewer. So artificial turf would be more of a sponge to kind of bring that in. So just main point coming in is just to express my point of view as an installer dealer who's on the front lines dealing with consumers who really want to beautify their homes and just want to be a voice for them, as I'm sure there are many here in Glendale. Thank you.
Mr. Bray. Tom Shibuta, followed by Victor Lanfranco.
Thank you for allowing us to come back on this subject. My wife my name is Tom Shibuta with a company called System Pavers. We actually install Tiger turf. My wife is living in Glendale for about 30 years, so I'm familiar with what you guys do here. I'm very proud to live here. I've been living here about 3 years, so you guys do a great job upkeeping this city. I'm coming here not to convince you because you guys already made a decision, but other cities have overturned the ban based on facts and what other people have proposed to them. So my thought was, put a system in place where we can actually permit it, have a commission oversee, what is being allowed in each individual front yard. I'm here today because we've actually installed a lot of turf in Glendale. Our company has. I live in Glendale, so I saw in the news the one day of a customer actually upset that she had to replace her front yard. So I haven't got that call yet, but I'm assuming I will eventually. So what I want to know is, or propose that maybe you guys put into place something where, it can be regulated. We pull permits in just about every city we go to. So a way to where a plan has to be submitted to check. A lot of cities require livescape with the turf because it is considered a hardscape. Aesthetically, it looks like real grass. So maybe adopt a rule where you have to have a certain percentage of livescape with that hardscape. But I'm a little nervous, never done this before, but that's kind of what I was proposing. So thank you for your time.
Thank you. Victor Lanfranco, followed by John Steele. Victor Lanfranco? Oh, sorry. Okay.
I don't know if you're interested. I would like to pass this around, if I may, so you can see.
We've had samples out
I'm
front.
sure you've seen a lot of samples in the past few years, right?
We like show and tell. That's okay.
Yeah, great. I'm here also as a businessman that's invested the past 10 years and a considerable amount of money into the synthetic grass industry. I've seen this industry over the past 10 years grow and start employing thousands of American jobs. You know, the last few years have been difficult for many. Everybody's talking about reinventing new systems, and the synthetic grass business has been driven by American technology, ingenuity, workforce, and when I hear council or any government oppose it or put a blemish on it, it kind of hits home because, you know, I've seen all the good things that this product has done. Once the ban became public, Google, Yahoo, Bing, and the news media picked it up, and our industry was once again unfairly tainted. We feel this board jumped to conclusions, and the reasons for the ban are unclear. I still don't understand. I mean, I keep hearing that there's lead in the product line, but yet most of your schools, playgrounds, even in Glendale, have this. So what I think this industry is looking for right now is clarity. I mean, if you tell us what the problem is, clear, something that can be proven, then we can act on it. In Glendale, the environmental testing firm has determined that the amount of lead in the artificial turf at the Glendale Sport Complex is far below federal and state limits. So another reason we're baffled why it's being banned only in front yards. Our company conducted its tests using the Alamitos Laboratory, an independent certified facility accredited by the American Industrial Association, and they concluded that the products contain no harmful chemicals. And you know what I'd like to do is, everybody always talks about the natural environment and they want natural grass and why it's beautiful. I'd like to shed a little light on natural grass. It's not so natural. It requires more than any other living crop, 42% of our limited water sources, to keep it green. It also requires proven cancer-causing chemicals to keep it green. All those chemicals end up in our water table and in the beaches. To maintain this natural grass, we use mowers, trimmers, weed whackers, and blowers that put out more air pollution than most diesel trucks do in 1 week, not to mention noise pollution. Hundreds of thousands of trees die every year because there's not enough water to water them. And this is because we're watering a crop that makes no sense. And when a product comes out that can fix these issues and conserve water and limit harmful chemicals that our children are exposed to, what do you guys do? Well, you ban these products and you punish the people who are trying to do the right thing. In North America this year, over 30 million square feet of landscape was installed. 30 million. This is almost 50% increase over the last 4 years. And that 30 million goes to, again, schools, playgrounds, front yards, hospitals, name it, and it's there. We should accept this product the way we accept fake wood shingles. I remember years ago, all the roofs were just wood, kill the trees. Now it's synthetic, vinyl siding, solar panels. Today's products and their technology, as hopefully you've had a chance to see, are allowing us to install beautiful grass, and we ask that this board consider lifting the ban or allowing us. I mean, this kind of hit us broadside. We got this off the news, allowing us to convince you that there's a good product, that there's a place for this product in the front yards, and that it's a product that's going to be here, it's going to stay, because if not, in 20 years, you guys are going to have to decide what type of cactus bushes you want in the front yard or what color you want to paint the rocks, because there's not enough water to keep what they call real grass living. We're just out of it. And I thank you for your time and hope you really reconsider at one point.
Thank you. John Steele, followed by Vic Watterson.
Don't forget your grass.
Oh, yeah. It's up in front. Sorry, Mr. Steele.
Thank you very much, Mayor Friedman and City Council members. I'm not going to be talking about artificial turf, but I am going to be talking to something that's near and dear to my heart. My name is John Steele, and I've been a resident of Glendale for over 48 years. In the interest of full disclosure, I am president of the Friends of the Glendale Public Library. As such, I have an obvious bias in favor of libraries and the contribution they make to the welfare of the community. First of all, I'd like to acknowledge the support of all members of the council for their support of the Glendale Public Library and the Friends of the Library. A little bit of background. In my years as a Glendale resident, I've been involved in some rather interesting issues. Among them, the development of homes above the Oakmont Country Club in the early 70s, and more recently, the Americana at Brand project. Both of these issues were controversial, and they attracted equally avid proponents and opponents. I did not expect the recommendation of the Director of Libraries that the City Council approve the conduct of a survey to determine the support of the community for a special parcel tax to support library services to be controversial. Yet, in a 3-2 vote 2 weeks ago, the Council turned down this proposal. The proposal would not increase taxes. It would simply determine if there was support for a special parcel tax. If there was support, that tax would still have to be put on the ballot and be supported by 2/3 of the voters. I believe the community should be allowed to vote on such a tax. In opposing the Director of Libraries' recommendation, the Council has effectively prevented this from happening. I think the electorate can be trusted to make an informed decision in this matter. Ramifications. All of us are aware of the threat to library funding in the city's normal budget process. The Chevy Chase and Casa Verdugo branches were put at risk this year. Fortunately, community support was key to preserving the necessary funding. It is not too much of a stretch, however, to believe that library funding will continue to be at risk in future years. The monies raised through a special parcel tax would eliminate this concern and assure continued funding of one of Glendale's most treasured assets. My recommendation, therefore, is that I know that library services enjoy widespread community support. This is evident in Glendale and is evident in cities, I think, nationwide. I would urge, therefore, that the City Council revisit this matter and allow the proposed community survey to proceed as recommended by the Director of Libraries, thereby allowing the residents of Glendale to decide whether to put a special parcel tax measure on the ballot. Thank you so much for your attention.
Thank you. Vic Watterson, followed by Jack Lee.
Good evening. I'm Vic Watterson, and I'm the president of Waterless Turf Concepts, here to speak on behalf of the waterless turf ban, or not on behalf, but to ask a consideration. So before I get any further and waste anybody's time, I would just like to know simply what was the primary basis or reason for the consideration that the turf was banned?
There were a number of reasons from different council members. I would suggest that rather than have us relive...
No, I don't want you to relive. Just the primary consideration.
The city attorney can give you the date that was discussed, and you can watch the meeting. And I think that would give you... Because it was a very long meeting, and there was a lot of discussion, and that will give you a lot more information.
Okay, You
can watch it on the internet.
Yeah, it's on the website.
Because
if I could sum it up for you in one line, I would, but it was a little more complicated.
Okay.
Watch it and then come back.
I'll come back. Okay, that brings up the second question. What is the reconsideration, or is there a reconsideration process which would overturn the ban?
Not likely.
Pardon?
Not likely.
Is there a process?
Into questions and answers, by the way. You come here, you make your statement. Then if we want to respond, we respond at the end of the meeting.
I just didn't want to waste anybody's time if there's not a consideration
but
process.
You keep asking questions. That's not
It's
the
two
format.
questions, sir.
Okay. Generally, the way it works is that you can say whatever you want to say, and then we don't respond. Actually, it's sort of a rule. And then in the end, if council members want to respond, they can. And that's because these items are not agendized, so we can't have discussion for legal reasons. You're allowed to give your input, but we're not really allowed to have a discussion about the topic because it hasn't been publicly noticed. And that's a state Brown Act rule. Okay? Sorry,
Okay.
he stopped your time, so I didn't want to take your time away.
No, that's fine.
But
Thank you.
we sort of can't go down the road of discussing this issue now because it hasn't been publicly agendized. So you're welcome to make whatever statement you want to make. Afterwards, we can ask the city attorney to give you whatever information you've asked for, but we can't engage in a dialogue. Okay, so
Okay.
I'll ask the city clerk to please put your timing back on. You can continue.
Yeah, I'm new at this, so I didn't understand the
I
process.
understand. I'm trying to give you the ground rules.
Okay. That's fine. Because very simply what I did in arriving at a decision as, sure, I'm in the industry, but I've been a landscape contractor for about 30 years now. So I love plants, plant material, all kinds of the benefits that they provide. So, but I got into this particular business in particular because of the water situation here in California, Southern California. So given all other considerations, environmental was my primary consideration, which is why I was asking what the concern was primarily with the turf. So what I do is I make a T-chart whenever I'm looking at, pros and cons of anything, any issue, any product, what have you. And I'm hard-pressed to find out the con side outweighing the pro side of this particular product. So I guess what I'm trying to, or what I'd like to present here is just the consideration that both sides of the product, the issue, all of the concerns, and I'm sure, and I'll watch, the other discussion that are considered before a final decision is made, even though it's already been made. So that's why my second question as to whether there is a chance of reconsidering. So, the products made in the USA, I've just real quickly, it's a 50 to 80% water saving product. No fertilizers are required, which pollutes the oceans and goes into the drainage storms. There's no pesticides required. It's a long-term product that'll last for 15 to 20 years in the ground. It's about 90% recyclable. The technology has advanced such that it's you can't tell the difference between real and artificial. There's no allergies. There's no gophers or rabbits or pesticides to treat those. It increases home values anywhere from 10 to 30%. And it's qualified for LEED points as well to new developers. Those are all the pros. The cons I see is there lead, possible lead in some of the products, some of the older ones that are out there? Potentially, yes. The new ones, no. Because we are required by California and EPA to meet strict standards of no lead. The carbon monoxide emissions from mowers, blowers, and other machinery emits more carbon dioxide than cars, 4 times the emissions. Fertilizers that are used to fertilize natural lawns also end up in the storm drain in the ocean and potentially cause wildlife destruction. And the nitrous oxide released from after a fertilization is 300 times more powerful than carbon dioxide emissions. That's just from fertilizing lawns, which are 80% of the landscape of most of our grounds.
Okay, thank you.
Thank you.
Jack Lee, to be followed by Mike Mohill.
Mayor Freeman, council members, good evening. My name is Jack Lee. I live in Aliso Viejo, which is a city in Orange County. I was concerned about the news of the ban and thought I would like to speak up on behalf of perhaps there are citizens in Glendale who would like to have lawns on the front yard. By banning synthetic grass, which has actually improved over the years, I think you're disenfranchising some of the local residents. The costs, I think, over 3-4 years, the payback will certainly cover all the water costs, maintenance, as well as potential chemical hazards from the runoff from the fertilized chemicals. I know that seems like all of you have made final decisions, but I hope that someday you'll take up this issue again and reconsider your decision. Thank you.
Thank you, sir. Mike Mohill to be followed by Leon Mayer.
Evening, Mayor Friedman, council members, and the viewing public. My name is Mike Mohill. Councilman Nigerian, the thousands of people who have left Glendale and their empty apartments, they're still there for the next years to come. So you have those empty apartments plus the new 1,000 we're just going to be adding for over the next 2 years. Number two, why didn't the neighborhood planning start about the same time you came on city council years ago? Why are we starting on it now? Okay, why I came to speak. Our quality of life for the year 2011. As I reflect on the quality of life in the city of Glendale, I think of the city of Irvine, which a few years ago was ranked #1 or in the top 10 cities to live. Nowhere in that report did my city, the Jewel City, the city of Glendale, appear. Years ago, the city council never passed millions of dollars in bonds for the residents of Glendale. Everything was cash and carry. Just like Mom and Dad taught us, if we wanted something, we would have to have the money or go without. At the federal level, if the politicians need money and expenses exceed revenue, Congress just prints more money, offers treasury notes, or both. This is called going for a loan at the bank. At the state level, the politicians up in Sacramento also float bonds when the state is running out of money and also have expenses greater than the revenue. Sacramento politicians can also reduce the amount of money they will send to both the county and the city governments. Thank God these politicians cannot print money like Uncle Sam. At the county level and the city level, these two governing bodies cannot print money like the state. They can borrow money on the open market and pass bonds worth millions of dollars, and at maturity, double the original cost of the bond, thus leaving the next generation of kids saddled with our debt. And too bad many of these kids are not eligible to vote or to be a rebel. When our city council keeps increasing our water and electric rates, we could vote these politicians out of office. When library hours are cut short or there is no money to fund after-school sports, we can ask council members, where did all the money go? When our roads like La Cañada Boulevard, Riverside Drive, Western Avenue, and Central Avenue need repairs and water and sewer lines are years behind in maintenance, we can ask our council members, where did all the money go? When local merchants are asked where are the customers, these business people can ask the city council, what have they done lately to make living in Glendale more affordable? When more people are leaving Glendale than want to live here, and a favorable bond rating is questionable according to Fitch, we can ask our council members what they have done to make Glendale a more desirable place to live. When parking is becoming a premium commodity, public transportation limited, and congestion and gridlock is commonplace, we can ask our city council members who is in charge of planning. When bike lanes are being traded for automobile lanes, we should ask our council members why. When youth soccer fields and sports in general can help reduce our drug problems, according to the experts, why are we giving over 560 city employees over $100,000 plus in pension benefits annually and for life, rather than building more soccer fields and other sports facilities? When we eliminate park rangers and resource officers, our local schools, we should ask council members why, instead of approved golden parachutes for city pensioners at retirement. When the mayor sets the water rate increases for discussion at 9:30 this morning, rather than at 6 o'clock this evening, the mayor has chosen a time of day to limit the influence of public opinion. The mayor has chosen a time of day when the public is busy at work, too busy to attend an important council meeting. Council members can look at the people and say, ha ha ha, we must be doing a great job because few people chose to vote in last April's election, and fewer people bothered to come before the council to question, complain, or get involved with the political process. We get the quality of life we deserve. Thank you. My name is Mike Mohill.
Leon Mayer, to be followed by Wayne Cook.
My name is Leon Mayer. I've never been here this late, and I'd like to feel that you as a city councilman and Mr. Starbird and the other city employees have been trying your best to give us a good quality of life. And I'm going to throw away my speech that I prepared to support the request by the library director for permission to spend some of the library's privately donated money just to do a survey as to the feasibility of a parcel tax. That's all she was asking. And two of you said that sounds fine, because after the survey is made, you have a right to look at the survey, see if you feel the survey is fair, and see if you feel from the survey you can reach a majority decision as to what type of parcel tax should be and could be raised. So that's basically where we're at. We're asking you to think about this in the future, and I'll make my remarks short in that regard. I'd like to personalize a little bit this question about the needs of the library. The library has taken some hits from the state and from your budgets, and it was not your fault. You've done your best to help the library. The state, under our new governor, is doing their best to solve the state's terrible problems. But the parcel survey is something that the library wants to do out of their own money, and if the survey doesn't look like we could get a 2/3 majority, that's fine. Then you would obviously not request and authorize a ballot vote on that. Just to personalize a little bit where I'm coming from. I was a deputy DA in charge of the Burbank, Glendale area in 1959-60. I ran for Congress in 62, and I moved to Glendale as a resident in 75, so I've been here for a few years. I've been active in other activities other than the Friends to the Library. But as the chairman of the author Artisan Friends chairman, I can personalize and see how the scope of reductions that the library is now facing could affect my program. And I'm not selfish about my program, because my program is for everybody. It's for everybody. And to give you a quick example, for example, now, they're not going to talk about all the famous authors I brought here, because you've been here and you know who I brought and everything. But, for example, about 2 years ago for Memorial Day, we had Paul Ignatius come to the library the day before he was the principal speaker at the Memorial Day program run by Larry Zarian. I was instrumental in getting Paul here. And everybody knows that Paul was a famous Armenian son. Many, many years ago, he served in the war with distinction and combat, became the Secretary of the Navy. I mean, he was here on a Sunday, and the library was closed that Sunday because of the holiday. So we had to have special arrangements made to have the library open for him to speak. That's just an example of where we need some extra money. Not me, but Cindy Cleary has to allow for that for employees to be at the hospital. One little example. Jane Fonda was here. Everybody said, boy, how'd you get Jane Fonda here? That's beside the point right now. Jane Fonda was here, and we had to have extra people at the library because there was some, first of all, there was a little question, well, was she going to cause a riot here or something like that? But the point is, we had a total big crowd at the main library, and that involved some extra work by the library, extra staffing. Another example, John Wooden. We had John Wooden. Everybody says, how did you get John Wooden here? How do you pay all this money for all these famous speakers? We don't pay money for all these famous speakers. We've had 3 speakers in the 12 years I've been here, and 3 of them, one was Vince Bugliosi, who came back to us. He charged us $350 originally. He gave the money back. And that's the only time we've ever paid anybody for speakers. So there's another example of the fact that occasionally to bring in a speaker, we need that extra money. So I back up everything John Steele, our president, said, and we ask you just to think about some of these things when you, if you have the time to say, let the survey be done.
Thank you.
And we'll abide by it. Thank you very much.
Mr. Mayor. Wayne Cook, to be followed by Terry Schlatter.
Good evening. My name is Wayne Cook. This is also the first time I've ever been here. And I'd like to talk about the quality of life in Glendale. The 5 members of the City Council really have a lot more power than I would have ever thought. You have the ability to improve the life of the citizens of Glendale or to make it maybe not quite so good. And when you take an oath, I'm not trying to patronize anybody here, but you know, you're supposed to defend the Constitution of the United States and also protect the citizens of Glendale. I would think that these are 2 of your highest callings. And there's 4 members of the City Council that perhaps maybe could look at that just a little bit. And also, I'm a minority owner in GWP because as a citizen of Glendale, I also should be represented. Glendale Water and Power held like an infomercial at Glendale College, and there was a police presence there. There was 2 policemen in the front, 2 policemen in the back, and I just wondered why they were so concerned that they had to have policemen. There was a Smart Meters forum a couple of weeks ago. A lot of people showed up, and there was only 1 council member that showed up. Now, this showed a lot of opposing views by credentialed speakers, turn, a lot of other people who have spoke all over the state. And, you know, you didn't really, most of you didn't show up. And I would suggest that, see, I want to be represented by 5 council members also. And I'm sure you want to do that for me. And one thing you could do, and the citizens of Glendale, if you would Google the dark side of smart meters and watch that, I would really ask you guys to do that. If you'd write it down or something, the dark side of smart meters. It would show you an awful lot of things about these smart meters that people are concerned about. Health issues is one of the main things. Glendale, by installing these smart meters, has cast basically a blanket of radiation that now covers the entire city. That's what happens. And, you know, I would like to have the people of Glendale or anybody else who's concerned call you guys and tell you if they get headaches, if they can't sleep, if there's problems that they have that they can't quite understand why. See, because, you know, the dark side of smart meters will explain a lot of that. And one other thing I'd like to say is that the people that are supposed to represent you, when they mock you, that's kind of hurtful, okay? And one of the city council members pulled out his laptop and opened it up and said, wow, watch out, I'm getting radiation, right? Well, you know, see, this RF radiation is a legal condition that is represented represented by the state of California as a legal condition, okay? And there are people that really do suffer from this, okay? And you're mocking the sick and the helpless. That's what you're doing. Now, I'd like to point out a personal situation here. And I can back this up with doctor's letters and everything else, okay? Now, they came and installed a smart meter in my water meter, and I didn't know about it, and they did it. And about 2 weeks after that happened, my heart went into AFib, okay? Now, I've never had that condition before in my life. And this is an electromagnetic problem, and you have an ECG, electrocardiograph, and what they have to do is they have to go and they have to jumpstart your heart again to try and get it to work correctly. Now, if the smart meters did contribute to that, this is costing me a lot of money. I'm on medication right now. And what do I do if they are successful in fixing my heart? And I have to move back now to my house, and it happens again. What am I supposed to do? Have I got to sell my house and move? I mean, I didn't buy my house with smart meters, okay? And how will you protect me? How will you represent me? Okay. Now, there's privacy issues also. Well, first of all, I'd like to talk a little bit about. Can I talk anymore?
Time is up. Sorry. You can come back next week.
All right. To be continued.
Be continued. Terry Schlatter to be followed by Betty Gustafson.
Good evening. My name is Terry Schlatter, and I'm a Glendale resident. I am here again to talk about smart meters that were installed by Glendale Water and Power. Last week, I contacted Martin Powers at Glendale Water and Power to request removal of the electric smart meter currently installed on my home. I explained to him that I have experienced many negative health effects since this meter was installed on my home and the smart grid was implemented. I told him that these problems are getting worse. I wake up routinely now 2 or 3 times each night, and there is a constant humming or buzzing sound in my ears. And it sometimes sounds like a truck is idling in my backyard. I told him that there are also other problems, but that the ear ringing is the biggest complaint I have in regards to these meters. And I reiterated with him that I didn't have this problem before the smart meters were installed, but I do now. I have since received a letter from Glenn Steiger, General Manager of GWP, dated November 23, 2011. The first paragraph of this letter states, and I quote, "Glendale Water and Power, GWP, is in receipt of your request that you not receive a smart meter. Though we are disappointed to receive this request, we will defer installation of your smart meter pending the California Public Utilities Commission, CPUC, decision on the Pacific Gas and Electric's application to allow customers to decline participation in their program for a fee. While GWP is not regulated by the CPUC, we feel it is appropriate to follow its guidelines with issues such as this." End quote. Based on this letter from the General Manager of GWP, it seems to me that the smart meter that is currently installed on my home should be removed. GWP has agreed to delay the installation of my meter. I would appreciate it if the city manager or a member of the city council would arrange for the immediate removal of my meter. I will leave you copies of the GWP letter so you can read exactly what it says. I also want to encourage the viewing audience to voice their complaints if they are having health issues that they believe are related to these smart meters. You can Google it, check it out online, and find out the many common complaints that people are having. You can email the city council members here in Glendale, write them letters, or speak at the weekly meetings to advise them of your concerns. And on Tuesday, December 13th, 2 weeks from today, smart meters are on the city council agenda. The city council needs to understand the impact these meters are having on our residents. Please come to the meeting and share your stories. It is crucial that the city council hears from you. And finally, I would like to implore the city council to do more research and find out about the many health complaints people are having with these wireless meters and mesh grids. I don't believe you were given all the facts when this system was proposed, and changes can be made to make it safe. You owe it to yourselves, your family, and friends, and all of our residents to do what is right. Thank you.
Thank you. Betty Gustafson, and then Harry Zavos is my last card.
Good evening. My name is Betty Gustafson, and I'm here tonight to talk about the choice that you decided to make for me, my household, and the rest of the Glendale citizens with the forced installation of the so-called smart meters. For whatever reason, this council, excluding Councilman Minokian, voted for this project, be it due to the stimulus money, improved efficiencies, or gosh, maybe so you could allow GWP the ability to just jack up the citizens' rates even more. I honestly don't believe you gave much thought to the privacy and safety issues, nor to the health effects from these meters. Let me talk about the health effects for a few moments. I want you to now picture this scenario as to what these harmful meters are doing to one person, me. I wrote the following 2 weeks ago, quote, "It is now very early Sunday morning at 4:15 a.m. and I am now in my kitchen frustrated from the lack of sleep and trying to put down on paper the effects these smart meters have on me almost nightly since they were installed, and again because of you. I was initially awakened at 2:10 a.m. on Sunday morning and tried to go back to sleep only to find myself looking at the clock once again. But now it said 2:40 a.m. With my ears once again ringing with those siren-like noises and my head feeling like it was going to explode, I desperately tried to go back to sleep. But now with a feeling of agitation and helplessness, I laid there till 3:55 a.m. until I once again just finally got up." End quote. I have always known the value of sleep that the human body needs to function. And folks, these nightly episodes aren't cutting it for me. That Sunday morning, I was scheduled to attend what I thought to be a very important 5-hour seminar on the subject of cancer. Feeling extremely tired, I still went, since I had lost a younger sister, a father, some relatives, and a few close friends to this disease. I was looking forward to this event and eager to learn more about the devastating effects and other possible treatments besides just the old standard of chemo and radiation that conventional medicines has offered us for years. I do know that both chemo and radiation kill the cancer cells, but also kill the good cells, thus weakening the immune system even further. So now we are forced just to accept these smart meters that you decided to have placed on our homes, now emitting radio frequency radiation 24/7. I ask you, how can this be right or even safe? You heard more than my story about the harmful effects these units are causing, yet you don't ask for any more studies concerning their damaging health effects. You take one report that the industry or your staff provides, and you as a council say that is good enough. When it comes to the real factual science behind these smart meters, I believe most of you haven't even studied the damaging EMFs and RFs these have on the human body, along with the animals and the pets that people have. I feel you have disregarded what your real purpose is on the council, and as a citizen, I say shame on you. When you took this position as a council member, you were supposed to represent all the citizens, even those who feel they want to speak out against your decisions. But maybe representing all the citizens has changed over the years. to only certain citizens, like those that are tied to various industries, including the smart meter industry, then of course, this kind of thinking and power allows you to believe you are still representing some citizens, just not all of them, especially the ones you might call the naysayers or the alarmists or even the ratepayers. When it comes to the next election for your position, just remember, the citizens of Glendale won't be fooled by your behavior. In closing, I'm not tied to any of these utility industries. I'm just an ordinary citizen that wants to get some sleep, be healthy, and be heard. So I ask the council to get an independent third party to do the necessary research and conduct studies as to the harmful effects these smart meters and grid systems are causing to all the citizens that you supposedly represent. I believe once you do that and understand this research, you will learn that these smart meters and grid systems pose a major health problem to both people and pets and need to be removed.
Thank you. Your time is up. Thank you.
Can I just add this one, please, this one last thing? It's one paragraph.
You know, it's late, and I've stopped everybody else, and I gave you a couple extra seconds. And
I just have this one very important, please.
you can make the point in one sentence, but not a paragraph.
Not only are our nervous systems taking a toll from these damaged or these dangerous EMFs, but even the bees are struggling to survive this impact. Look around you and see them dead and very lifeless. And whether you think that affects you or not, there's something that we can't live without. So I ask you, if they can't handle the toxic overload, what makes you think we can? Thank you.
Harry Zavos, you were here with us at 9:30 this morning, and you're here with us at 9:30 this evening.
Something symmetrical about that.
It is. You're our bookend tonight.
All right. Council, my name is Harry Zavos. I'm a resident of Glendale. And Mayor, this morning, you all met, and you met to discuss raising water rates in order to acquire revenue, necessary revenue, to fund necessary capital improvements. At that meeting, Councilman Manukian suggested an alternate source of funding. He suggested that the charter-authorized transfer of water revenues to the general fund in violation of Article 13D of the Constitution be returned back to the utility to be used to fund those capital improvements, and thus reducing the amount of necessary rate increase or eliminating its need entirely. The city attorney indicated that there is no case on all fours holding that those transfers were illegal, although he did opine that if such a case should be before a court, the court probably would find them illegal. Now, that statement, whether intended or not, leaves the impression that there's a little bit of wiggle room. There might be some reasonable doubt as to whether those transfers are illegal. And I am of the firm conviction that there is no reasonable doubt, and I believe that that conviction is well supported even though there may not be a case on all fours. That conviction is based on four propositions. The first comes from the Constitution, Article 13D, which states, and I quote, "The provisions of this article shall apply to all assessments, fees, charges, whatever imposed pursuant to state statute or local governmental charter authority." Article 13D makes it clear that it applies to charter cities. And there's a long line of cases indicating that if there is a conflict between the charter and the Constitution. The charter has to give way to the Constitution, and that's only logical. Charter and charter cities are creatures of the Constitution. They only exist because the Constitution provides for them. That's the first proposition. The second proposition is that in 2006, the California Supreme Court determined that fees for water service were covered by Article 13D of the Constitution. The two other propositions come from restrictions in Article 13D of the Constitution. Second proposition, I quote from Article 13D. Revenues derived from the fee or charge shall not be used for any purpose other than that for which the fee or charge was imposed. Fees and charges imposed on water rate payers are imposed to provide them water service, not to be used to support general fund obligations. The fourth proposition, which I read from Article 13D, is almost a restatement of the third proposition. No fee or charge may be imposed for general governmental services. Unless and until somebody produces credible legal authority or argument to undermine these four propositions, there is no reasonable doubt that those transfers are illegal. Mr. Manukian, I want to publicly salute you for you to suggest that fees wrongfully taken from the ratepayer's utility and transferred to the general fund should be returned to that utility to be used to fund needed capital improvements and thereby reduce the burden on ratepayers to pay for that is simply fair, just, and equitable. It's the right thing to do.
Thank you. That's my last part. Are there any comments from council?
I have a comment, and although we're going to the 13th hour of our deliberations today, I just can't let Mr. Mohill play his game of I got you. Now, Mr. Mohill, you said, oh, when I got you on the planning issue, oh, where were you when you first came on council? Where were you when I first came on council, Mr. Mohill? That's my question. When we were working on the downtown mobility plan, the award-winning downtown mobility plan, when we were working on the downtown specific plan, the award-winning downtown specific plan, when we were doing historic districting in the city. So don't play I gotcha, Mr. Mohill. I sometimes think that your comments really show your true colors, that you only want to tear down the council members rather than promote the best interests of the city. So please, when you discuss things, let's talk about the positive ways you can make the city better, not point to a councilman erroneously and say you didn't do this and you didn't do that. Thank you.
Yes, there were individuals who asked the question regarding the artificial turf, whether there was a process to reconsider the item on the council again, and they're not here, but I do want to clarify that there is always a process for the council, for the city council, or for any council, any body to reconsider any issue that has been in front of council, to revisit it, and to make additional deliberations on it. So 2 council members have to agree to put it back on the agenda, and it will come back on the agenda, and the council will discuss it again. So I didn't want anyone to have, that's not true.
I've been there twice.
Just for clarification, if something like that where the council's voted and taken action, it would take, in the case of this particular...
3 individuals?
Take 2 council members that voted to keep the current policy, in essence, to ask for it to come back.
I stand corrected. Then 2 council members that voted for it would have to, or the winning side would have to vote. So there is a process to put it back on the agenda.
There's a process, but it has to come
because
from
they
those.
left under the impression that there wasn't a process to bring it back
That's
on
correct.
the agenda.
There is
There
a
is
way
a
to do it, but it would
process.
take-
The winning side, the individuals who voted for the item can, two of them can choose to put it back on the agenda. Okay.
Any other comments?
I'd just like to wish Jim happy retirement. What a way to go out.
Oh, yeah.
A 12-hour session. Enjoy your retirement, Jim.
And we're going to be adjourning tonight in the memory of Congressman Moorhead.
Is there a motion?
So done.
Second.